initiate the meeting with the opening and call to order. In that the Pledge of Allegiance, and by question, the Pledge of Allegiance, is that the flag behind you that we'll be using, or are you going to be displaying it in some other way?
Oh, no, this is how it is. So would you
Okay.
want that? Let let me know what you want, what else you want.
Generally, there's a standalone tile where the flag is displayed, but
Yes,
if that's not something you can pull up readily, then we can
I
certainly use the tile you have showing.
okay. All right. Yeah, I can pull it up, but it'll take me a second.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and then just be able to use the flag display behind you this time, and then
Okay,
next time around we'll make sure that that's lined up and ready to go.
sure thing.
Okay, thank you. So it is a call to order and the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'd like to establish a quorum. I don't know whether we have voice contact yet with Director Farmer, but he is available, hopefully, to be able to hear us.
Can you
Oh,
can you hear
excellent.
me?
Yes. Welcome. So we have all directors present and the quorum is established. So the next item is an agenda review for any additions and deletions. And I will ask, there are a couple of things that I had in mind here, and I'd like to ask if this is satisfactory for folks. Three of the business items in regular business were added just at the last minute because they are something that required action in today's meeting were F, G, and H. And I'd like to suggest that we move those to the beginning of the agenda so we can address those certainly and in time and get that taken care of. And then one other thing, I'd like to move 7A, which is the president's report, to just prior to public comment. And this is the singular time of happening. It's just that this is my first real opportunity to address the board as a president's report. And I have a few things that I'd like to lay out for our consideration. So not consideration, sorry. Get used to using that word correctly, for our information. So is that an acceptable process for folks to be able to go? Okay, seeing also nodding heads, so I'll go ahead and go in that way. And so Asana, just for your reference then, the regular business items F, G, and H will be coming to the beginning of the business items. And then 7A, would like to be able to have prior to public comment. So any additions or deletions to the rest of the, Director Gray?
Yes. You can, I'm unmuted, right? Yeah. On item 5A, I had a concern about because it looks like it puts the cart before the horse a little bit. 5B is where we talk about the parameters for the policy committee's work in the coming year. And 5A is an assignment of a particular task to the policy committee. I would propose that until we've resolved what we want the policy committee to do, that 5A be indefinitely pulled from the agenda and taken up at a later time if necessary.
Well, I will ask Vice President Howell, is that is that something that falls in form and function, or is what's on on A different than that perception?
Yeah, A is very specific. This is a report from the committee to the board and making a suggestion which the board may or may not choose to follow. But the committee has done its work on this one and is simply making a recommendation to the board. So it's appropriate at this time to bring it forward in that way.
Okay, I do understand the directing the committee to do something, the way that it's worded.
Yeah,
It would seem that B actually would be part of the discussion about whether A should even be considered for direction to the committee to be doing.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the committee, I'm sorry, Madam President, this is the committee coming back with a report where the committee's not asking for direction here. This is something the committee wishes to report to the board.
Okay, I was under,
Not act on it.
was that a specific direction from the board previously?
No, this is the committee report to the board regarding a recommendation regarding the committee is simply recommending to make it very short and sweet. The committee is simply recommending that the board consider adopting some lighting policy yet to be determined. So that's all the board has to do is decide whether it wants to do that or not.
And is there, that fits very neatly into the title of what B is, though. That's the reason that.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I really want the board to receive the report and to comment on it separately. I mean, the committee has done a good bit of work on this, and to just do what you're suggesting would be an insult to them. I think the board needs to consider, they've gone to the trouble of making a report to the board. The board needs to receive that report.
Okay, and then the action could be to assign it for consideration under B when we go through that review process.
That was the idea, yeah.
Okay. Director Gray, is that acceptable to you? Okay.
well, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, fine. Then what we will do is handle F, G, and H initially, and then we will go in the order established after that, the A, B, C, D, E. Okay. Thank you all. With that, unless there's any other action that anyone is requesting? No. All right. We'll move on to public safety then. And first out is the sheriff's report.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Stuart MacDonald, the commander at the Sheriff's Coast Station.
Welcome.
I'm happy to provide a report of activities between the dates of November 8th and December 8th of this year. In the Cambria CSD area of service, we had 45 calls for service. That compares to a number last year in the same time frame a year earlier of 53 calls for service. So just a slight decrease in the number of calls. We did not have any assault or battery calls. We had 12 disturbance calls. We had 2 burglaries. One was from a locked utility trailer, and then a second burglary missing from a homeless or unhoused neighbor's tent. We had 3 theft calls, 2 vandalisms. We did not have any mail theft, fortunately. We had 1 telephone scam, 3 suspicious circumstance calls, and then I like to update the board and community on some of the service that the deputies that work in your area are providing in terms of their own initiated activity. Enforcement stops being one of those things that includes vehicle stops, bicycle stops, or pedestrian stops for enforcement purposes. There were 29 enforcement stops during that month-long period. Preventative patrol activity includes things like foot patrol or extra patrol of a specific area, on-site contacts or bar checks, those kinds of things. There were 14 of those preventative patrol activities. And then in terms of our COVID compliance program, over the course of that month, we had 33 incidents where we did COVID enforcement. And what that consists of is for each of those 33 episodes of doing enforcement, several businesses were checked for compliance with the COVID restrictions, and in this circumstance, all found to be complying with guidance from the county. The other item I'd like to discuss is that we have been working with the district over the last several weeks to make contact with the unhoused neighbors that are staying in the encampment at Highway 1 and Cambria Drive. We're bringing services, homeless services such as mental health, drug and alcohol, veteran services, and housing services to attempt to try and connect those residents there in the encampment with more permanent solutions. But we will be noticing them and conducting a closeout and cleanup of that encampment in early January. With that, that's my report, and I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Well, I wanted to thank you particularly for that last piece of information too, because of course, some things are kind of visible to the community in terms of seeing your presence there at the encampment area and not necessarily being aware of what that represented. So I know that there's been quite a bit of effort with support facilities and yourself and interface with the district and being able to address the conditions that those folks are experiencing there. I did want to ask you on the COVID compliance. You said there were several businesses, so I'm not to assume that, for instance, those 33 that you listed were all individual businesses that were being interacted with, that maybe it may be multiple for an individual business?
Correct. The 33 represents the number of times we went out to conduct compliance, and for each of those 33 instances, several businesses were checked. So one instance may be a check of the West Village, where maybe 4 or 5 businesses are visited. And then on another day, an instance of COVID compliance might occur in the East Village with, again, 3 or 4 businesses visited. So the number of businesses would be that number of 33 times, say an average of 4 businesses per episode.
So in other words, a very active participation in the process.
Yeah. We are making a lot of visits, and of course, as you know, our philosophy and standpoint is to generate voluntary compliance. There are some additional steps we can take to refer violations for business license administrative action and things like that. However, we have found by and large that there's quite a bit of voluntary compliance with the regulations.
Excellent. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you so much for the report, Commander McDonald.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Farmer.
It's no problem. Commander, I just curious, Commander McDonald, what determines, I notice under disturbances where it says dog barking, what determines whether law enforcement responds to that or someone from animal services responds to a complaint like that?
For a dog barking complaint, time of day has a lot to do with it. Animal services has employees out for a good portion of the day, but in the evening hours they do go onto an on-call status. So we will be the primary responders, in the later evening and overnight hours.
Right.
And there are times when animal services are all of their employees are tied up during the day with activities, and so we will handle those if they're unavailable, kind of as assist that agency.
All right. Well, I had a feeling that time element would be part of it, so thank you so much for that answer. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Any other questions from board members? Okay, Thank you, Commander.
Okay, happy holidays, and I'll speak with you again in January.
Thank you, sir. You
You as
too.
well.
And have a
Thank
safe
you.
holiday.
Thank you. Mhm.
So we'll move on to the CCSD Fire Chief's report. And so I saw, yes, Chief Hollingsworth, hello.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon, President Stidel, members of the board. Thank you for letting us be here today. I'd like to add my welcome to Commander McDonald. Stuart is somebody that I've had the opportunity of working with for a number of years. I know he's already signed off here, but we're blessed to have him representing the Sheriff's Department up in the North Coast area. He's very responsive, very clued into what's happening here, and he's a quick phone call for me, and we've assisted each other numerous times. So I think we're all going to benefit from his presence. For the month of November, we had 77 emergency responses. 2 of those were for fires, and we were able to jump on those very quickly. So there was very little damage associated with either fire, but it's just a reminder that they do happen. 80, where we are compared right now to 2019, just to continue to show that because of the COVID-19 pandemic response and people buttoning up their homes a little bit, we're only at about 80.1% of the call volume of where we were last year, which is a fairly significant drop. However, it's also relatively even to what other agencies are noticing across the board. We'll continue to report on that just so you know how it's affecting the community. And with that, we're holding at about 76% of services rendered to local versus 24% to non-locals, as people still are, believe it, are traveling and coming into our community. The 2 main things I want to remind everybody is we have a few days left for Toys for Tots. You'll remember that we actively participate for every year. And although the fire station is closed to the public, we did work out a deal with the people that are picking this up, and the receptacles are there in front of the station, available for the next few days still prior to Christmas for drop off, and they're picking that stuff up daily. So even though we can't participate by having them in the station and collecting more stuff that way, we still were able to figure out a way to be a receiving point to be able to help those that are in need. The last thing I'd like to share with you is that in times of pandemic, the Public Health Department and the EMSA, the Emergency Medical Services Agency, have worked to expand the protocols of the paramedics and what we're allowed to do in the community, specifically for the purpose of inoculation. So if we were to have some kind of major event, they could task us with the ability to providing flu shots, for instance, for the community. Because there's going to be the anticipated vaccines coming within the next relatively short time frame for the community for coronavirus, they've already asked us to participate, and we're doing a trial run of that today. Those are called point of distribution pods, POD, and we're assisting with one right now in Morro Bay. I have 2 of my personnel that are there right now. And they're following all the protocols for the delivering flu vaccines, the seasonal flu vaccines for everybody that wants to come through. There's an app that you can download and actually a QR code that you can use on your phone and directly sign into and pre-fill some of that data. So when you show up, they just bring it up and they have that information. And although we are able to provide this service and give the community the flu shots and assist county health in this regard, this is really a big trial run for when the vaccines for COVID come around. So just know that your personnel, your members of the fire department are actively participating in that. We're going to continue to do so because we're going to be talking about potentially vaccinating not hundreds, but many thousands of people in the community when this comes available. So as more information comes out, we will let you know. And when we have more information about when and where the actual vaccine will be distributed for general population, that will be aggressively marketed and given to you. Other than that, I'm over to you for any questions.
Well, that's excellent news, Chief. I appreciate it. And just to verify, the online sign up that you were referring to is through what source?
Right now, you can do that through Morro Bay Fire Department. Since they're the ones hosting this, it's actually being done a drive-through setup through St. Timothy's Church there in Morro Bay behind the fire department. But you can sign up through their website. They have a QR code. It's going for the rest of today. It should shut down around 4:30 or so. But they may be doing another trial run. And if they do, they'll have that information available. But as soon as we have the information for either an additional flu distribution, if this is something that the county health wants to pursue, or the actual distribution for the COVID vaccine, that will be heavily marketed and given out as soon as we have that information.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions from the board for Chief Hollingsworth? I see none. Chief, thank you very much, and thank you for your service this year. It's very much appreciated, and those of the folks in your organization. And wish you a very good holidays and a safe one for everyone.
Thank you. We're very happy to help.
Okay. Moving on, then we will be going to the public comment, but as requested, what I wanted to do first was provide President's report, since this is my first opportunity to do it. And just as a highlight of some things for the information in today's agenda, I wanted to direct folks to particularly Mr. Mendoza's facilities report regarding the homeless encampments. Some of the information you'd already received from the commander when he was giving the interactions of the sheriff's staff. And also to Mr. Danzo's utilities report for updates regarding the energy conservation measures going on with the wastewater plant upgrade. And another tech topic of interest. And for those in the community who had expressed a desire to see more of the Flume Smart water stems and systems rebates, those are going to be made available again, and some information is provided in Mr. Danza's report on the grant process to make that happen. So that's good news as well. As we go on, I wanted to iterate a couple of the thoughts that Director Rice had left us with at our last meeting. One of them, she talked to shifting baselines. And that was being aware of the current needs and conditions that should be kept foremost in our minds when we're going through our decision making, because not doing so generally results in lost opportunity for positive forward movement and for decision making. And adopting a more forward-looking perspective on how we access information and we use it in our decision making. Because not doing so generally gives us reactive decisions instead of proactive decisions that are based on an outward look and planning and some definition. I was fascinated in her statement about Cambria as more than just water, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that. It can certainly be overlapping in other considerations, but efforts towards a singular item can really keep us less effective and, at worst case, non-responsive or unaware of the overall district needs. And I think probably the community wish that she left us with is the most simply stated but carries the heaviest obligation, and that is to be sustainable and resilient because we're in the way that we manage our resources. And I would like to add that resilience is strengthened by continuous risk management and all of the elements of our decision making. The third and the last time I wanted to discuss today was the conduct of our board meetings. Because there's some pros and cons to the Zoom adaptation in this new way that we're all living our lives. On one hand, the informality of sitting in front of a screen and regaining time based on eliminating the travel back and forth has some real appeal. I think we've all had the opportunity to enjoy that. But on the other hand, it's also moved us away from some of the structure that a physical meeting place offers. And I'd like to reestablish some of that structure in two ways. First, regarding the board and the public interactions during meetings, I think it's important that the board be able to conduct its business in the two board meetings each month. It really is the only time that we as a board, as directors, can communicate with each other on the business needs that need to be done. And the general public comment and the public comment prior to board discussion of those individual agenda items is the time for the community to participate with the board. The informality of Zoom seems to take us away from that pattern, and that leads to an expectation of either multiple or continuous questions to the board during its deliberations. So going forward, I'd like to be moving back to a more structured period of interaction. The general public comment is, of course, for any item not on the agenda, and any speaker may speak once for up to 3 minutes unless otherwise determined. And the agenda-specific public comment is offered after the introduction of the agenda item, but prior to the beginning of the board discussion and deliberations. And any speaker may speak once during that time period. So public comment will be at the beginning after the introduction of the agenda item. The second item that I'd like to address is to please ask that any public comment for the specific agenda items be specific to the item. And if I could ask you please to refrain from broadening your observations or questions to topics other than the specific agenda item, it would be appreciated. The district is currently looking into the Zoom format that also will include a visible online timer for us. So that should help all of us in reestablishing that visible time that's available to speak. And with that being said, that's the information I wanted to relate to the board at this time for a president's report. It'll be in a more normal format upcoming for other board meetings, but wanted to take the opportunity this first time around to be able to do that. So thank you for your time. We'll move on to public comment then. And this is for items which are not on the agenda. And that's interesting. Okay, participants. And we appear to have 20 attendees. Director Farmer?
Yes.
I believe your mute is on.
My apologies. I was just going to make mention of the fact Steve Neff, I noticed two other people attendees have their hands up, but Steve's had his hand up now for about 10 minutes. I don't know what it was in reference to, but that might be the first person you want to call on.
Okay, thank you. I believe also, and we're getting this verified, but the progression of names listed with hands when they are raised generally is established by the time period in which they raise their hands. So there's almost an automatic sorting of whomever spoke or asked to talk is indicated in that way. So we'll probably just be progressing right down the line in the listing of names. So Mr. Niffen, Osana, if you could please
Yes.
open the conversation to Mr. Niffen. Thank
Sure.
you.
Mr. Niffen, go ahead.
Great, thank you, President Stidell. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, fabulous. I'm going to address the board this afternoon as a member of the public and not as the president of the Pros Commission. My name is Steve Niffen, and I sit on the board of the Sophidian Foundation, and we've made a significant contribution to the skate park. And I thought at this time I'd take a moment to let you know why we've made that contribution. Number one, we like that location. We think as a foundation that's focused on a lot of local issues, that we think that improving that particular piece of property benefits the community. We like the idea of it being kids. We like the idea of it being active recreation. And so we firmly support that location. The other reason we've made this contribution is we're trying to encourage others in the community to also contribute, because we believe that we'd like this, funded as much as possibly by private donations, or at least granting of money from the state, which takes us into the third issue, which is important to me. I know that the grant from the Prop 68 grant sits out there for us. I actually attended that meeting as the president of PROS, but am privy to that information. And I just think that it's imperative that we as a district apply for that money. And I just want to say, as a member of the community, I think all 177,000 should go towards the skate park. If they've got a significant amount of money in their pocket already, and we put that 177,000 to it, or whatever that number is, we get pretty close to the total, and that takes us off of asking for public funds as much as possible. And as far as the actual process for building the skate park, we are very grateful for the general manager and staff, Mr. Carmel, looking at other ways of getting this done. And so we're just very grateful, and we're excited about seeing this come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Niffen.
Yeah. Stan Cooper, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay. President Seidel, members of the board, my name is Stan Cooper. I have been a resident of Cambria for 36 years now. I've raised 2 children here. My wife taught at the grammar school for 30 years, April Benham. I've been on a couple of community boards over the years. I was also involved in the original skate park committee that met at the one we used to have, the youth center, and when Lady Tie-Dye Diane Brooks was involved in that, and the volunteer contractors in town. And it was a great community uplifting event. As a community, we've been really good at supporting senior citizens, but I think in the things that they need, but we've been remiss in considering the needs of the Cambria youth. I encourage the CCSD to expedite the authorization of the new skate park project. And I further recommend that Tesla be excluded from using a portion of that property, since it is small footprint. In order to utilize the maximum amount of space there for a youth activity, I think that we should encourage Tesla to look someplace else in the community. I don't mean go away Tesla. I merely mean skate park in that space. And so I'm speaking as a general citizen here, and I hope that we're able to get this done and not let it get mired down in minutia and, like, oh, let's study that some more and come back to it next year. I think we need to kick this can, get it going, break earth, pour cement, get it done. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Asana?
Yes, and Christine Heinrichs, go ahead.
Thank you. President Steidel, I appreciate your refinements on conducting the meeting. Since you are exploring the option of having a timer on comments, I ask you also to add allowing all participants to be seen during meetings. Okay. District Council has advised that it is your option to include all participants. There is no expectation of privacy at a public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henriks. Osana?
Yes, we have one more. Dennis Dutzik, go ahead. Dennis, go ahead.
Sir, you need to
Please unmute.
yourself.
Unmute, Dennis. There we go.
Thank you so much. This will be very brief. My name is Dennis Dujic. My wife Pamela and I have been property owners there in Cambria for almost 20 years. And I have just recently semi-retired, and I have some free time available. And I'm saying that I'm offering to assist the board. I have a long career of doing environmental permit work, construction of major renewable energy projects and those sorts of things. So I have a lot of CEQA background and project management, program management experience. So if you're looking for someone from the community who is a property owner and can maybe offer some insights into how we might collaborate and work together, I'm always about that. So anything I can do, feel free to look me up. I'm happy to assist.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duchek. Is your contact information readily available, or is by just your last name available in the phone book, or?
I'll be happy to send my information over to John if you'd like.
That would be excellent. Thank you. It's always good to be able to have an access point to folks with backgrounds in all subjects.
Thank you.
And thank you for your offer.
Well.
So we appear to have no additional public comment at this point, I believe. Okay.
Yes.
We'll move on to the consent agenda then. Is there a motion for, or excuse me, any request for a movement on any of the consent agenda items? Mr. Gray?
Yeah, and on a somewhat technical procedural point, neither Karen nor I were at the meetings that are covered in the minutes on the part in the consent agenda. So should we break the minutes out separately? Because she and I would have to abstain, I assume. Karen can join in on that too if she wants to.
Well, I will ask. Of course, you could always abstain if you were, uncomfortable with doing that after having read them. But Mr. Carmel, we would still have a quorum for being able to approve the consent agenda items, or we can just break them so that the minutes would be set aside and have a different quorum quantity to be able to vote on it. What's your recommendation?
A separate vote on 4B would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, with that being the case, why don't we, I would like to entertain a motion for, yes, Director Farmer?
Yeah, so, sorry, I should have raised the other hand over there. I just want to make a comment with regard to the contribution from the liaison reports and perhaps ad hoc reports as well. And this might make it easier for Osana and perhaps more complete for members of the public that are looking at the minutes, that those of us that make reports, ad hoc committee, but especially liaison reports, that we type them up and give them to Osana, and she can put them in the minutes. And then I think that'll make it easier for her, like I said, than her having to put the information in, from what we say. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. And when we get to those reports, we can go ahead and address that as an action for all of the committees in terms of the meeting minutes. That's an excellent recommendation. Thank you, President Farmer. Or Director Farmer.
Yeah, well, thank you.
President Steidel, I have a comment for item 4D, a written comment, public. 4D as in dog.
4D.
Yes.
Well, Well, it is,
That's regular.
it is on the regular, it's not considered regular business, but it is an item on the business agenda. And the comment is written, I take it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and do it then. Thank you, Asana.
Okay, sure. Item 4D, consideration of adoption of resolution 57/2020, amending the CCSD salary schedule. This is from Amanda Rice. Summary of my questions at the end of this email. Regarding fiscal impact, there may be no new fiscal impact of this resolution, but as this is a follow-up to approval of the union MOUs, there is fiscal impact related to this item. Regarding reserve firefighters, the fiscal impact of the state mandated increase for reserve firefighters, which is the right thing to do, is unclear. How many reserve firefighters are there? How likely is that number to change? It looks like there are 2 new designations, reserve fire engineer and reserve lieutenant, both at a higher hourly wage than the reserve firefighter. When were these positions added? While the total number of dollars is small relative to the fire department budget, it would be good to know at least an average cost to the fire department quarterly or monthly and some target staffing levels for these positions. Regarding the action, this resolution for this item seems to cover only 1 year of salary changes for 3 groups: SEIU, IAFF, and reserve firefighters. Does this mean the GM will bring a new resolution each year to update the salary schedules? Are all the changes effective January 1, 2021? If not, is it possible to consolidate the dates to a single date? There are long-term fiscal impacts related to personnel costs and obligations. Currently, the district pays about $15,000 total each month to reimburse health insurance expenses for 39 former employees. This is the result of previous negotiations and agreements that were in effect when those employees retired and must be honored. Compensation is not the same as salary. Salaries are less than half of the payroll payable total. See agenda page 19. The November expenditure report shows $158,828.20 in direct deposit. Other non-cash and long-term commitments to the district employees and retirees make up the remaining employee payroll payable total of $378,987.72. This doesn't include the $15,000 in reimbursement to retirees. Recap of my questions. How many reserve firefighters are there? What is the board approved staffing level? When were the 2 new ranks added? Does this mean the GM will bring a new resolution each year to update the salary schedules? Are all the changes effective January 1, 2021 and expire December 31, 2021? If not, is it possible or needed to consolidate the dates to a single date? Amanda Rice.
Thank you, Asana. So I will ask Mr. Carmel, was there anything in that you felt from a perspective of the negotiation of the contracts or anything else needed to be addressed?
No, I don't.
Okay, fine, thank you. All right. And Director Farmer?
Sorry to interrupt. With regard to item 4D, and this has been brought up before previously in public comment, not today, but in previous meetings, the fact that many state employees are having their salaries reduced. I realize that maybe we've already had agreements with various unions, but somehow moving forward into this decade, I think we all need to be more realistic, more efficient in this area of salary increases, considering especially the challenges that so many people have in even making a decent salary these days that are ultimately paying the salaries through their rate payments. So, or whatever. So that's something that I think we should be considering moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Any other comments? All right, what I'd like to do is entertain a motion for the consent agenda exclusive of item B. So items A, C, and D. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I so move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. So it was moved by Vice President Howell and seconded by Director Gray. And Osana, would you call a roll, please?
Yes, will do. Vice President Howell,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
and President Stidel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on then to consent agenda B. Do I hear a motion for consent agenda B?
Yeah, I'll move that too.
All right. Thank you, Vice President Howell. And a second?
Aye. I'll do that.
Thank you, Director Farmer, for the second on that.
Okay. All right. So,
Sorry, Vice President Howell?
I see that Director Dean has her hand up. Sorry.
Yes, Director Dean?
Okay, so while I was not on the board when the meetings that these minutes are for were done, I did attend the meetings. So I'm aware of whether the minutes are accurate or not. So is it proper for me to go ahead and vote on it, or should I abstain since I was not on the board at the time those meetings were held?
No, you can certainly vote on it. Having attended the meetings themselves, you can determine whether you're comfortable with what the board meetings represent and be able to vote on those.
Thank you.
all right. So I think we can start the vote.
Yes.
Vice President Howell,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
and President Stidel.
Aye.
Aye. And Director Gray will abstain?
Abstain, yes.
Okay.
So the vote is 4-0, 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. All right, that addresses the consent agenda items. So we'll move on to regular business, and with the realignment, what we will be doing is starting with regular business item 5F, which is discussion and consideration to fill a position on the Resources and Infrastructure Committee on an emergency basis. Mr. Carmel, do we need a motion to suspend the rules related to our bylaws so that we can take this vote?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, we do. It's not exactly consistent with both the board bylaws and the standing committee bylaws. So I think that would be appropriate. And Rosenberg's rules of order require a 4/5 vote on a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay, I appreciate that. All right, I'd entertain a motion then to suspend the rules for this particular agenda item to vote it. And Director Dean, are you?
Yeah, I will make that motion to suspend the rules so that we could do this.
Excellent. And I do have a second.
Great.
From Director Gray. Thank you.
Yeah, a second.
All right. And Osana, if you would please take the roll call on this.
Yes. Director Dean,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Vice President Howell,
Aye.
President Stidel.
Aye.
Thank you.
So that passes with a 5-0 yes. Moving on then, discussion and consideration to fill a position on the Resource and Infrastructure Committee on an emergency basis. Entertain discussion from the board, please. Director Dean?
Former Director David Pearson, who is also the former chair of the R&I Committee, has volunteered to fill that position. So I would move that we go ahead and appoint David Pearson in the emergency basis to fill the vacancy on the R&I committee.
I'll
Thank you,
second that.
Director. A second
Yeah.
from you, Director Farmer, is that correct? Excellent. Asana, can you do roll call, please?
Oh.
Oh.
Could I ask a
Sorry?
question first? This may be out of order, it's a question, but what is the term? Is this an interim until the new board is seated? The new committee is seated, rather? Okay. That's understanding. Thank you.
Okay.
Asana, roll call, please.
Yes, I was talking, but I was muted.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
President Stidel?
Yes.
I missed the chance to introduce the item, but also wanted to check to see if there was any public comment at the beginning of the item.
I'm gonna double check right now.
Oh, unless there's written comment,
Yeah, I will check.
there is no,
There is none.
there is none then. So unless there's written comment, there is none.
Okay. All right, go ahead. I will then, this is for a motion to appoint David Pearson until the next
On an emergency basis
emergency basis.
to the R&I committee
Okay.
until, yeah,
Okay.
until such term that the position is or filled under, I'm going to make it more complicated than it needs to be. Sorry.
Yeah, just until the new board,
Okay.
until the new committee's there, yeah.
Until new committee members are established.
Yeah, right.
All
Thank
right,
you.
and it was a Director Dean,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice President Howell,
Aye.
and President Stidel.
Aye. So the
Thank
vote is
you.
5-0.
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you to former Director Pearson for being able to join the R&I committee and lend your expertise to that. It's much appreciated. So, Mr. Weigold, moving on to Agenda 5G, could you introduce that for us, please?
Yes, President Stidel, agenda item 5G is discussion and consideration to direct staff to advertise for open positions on all standing committees. It is recommended that the board discuss and consider this issue and direct staff.
Okay. So we will, before moving to the board discussion, we will take any public comment. I don't see anything from the attendees. Do we have any written, Osana? Do we have any written public comment for?
Oh.
Okay.
No, I was talking again. I was muted.
I know, I understand. Thank you. Okay, with that being the circumstance, then could you introduce Mr. Weigel, the overall content of the staff report?
Yes, President Stidel, the board of directors have reviewed and appointed one CCSD board member as chairperson to each standing committee at its last meeting on December 10th last week. And the terms of all the volunteer standing committees expire on January 17th of next year, 2021. So new appointments need to be made at the January 21st meeting or as soon thereafter as possible. Section 2.3C of the CCSD Standing Committee bylaws identifies the method for filling these openings as described in the staff report. The current chairpersons are Director Gray for Finance Committee, Director Dean for Resources and Infrastructure Committee, and Director Howell for Policy Committee. And the staff is recommending that the board direct the staff to advertise for all positions on all three standing committees.
Thank you. Now, we had actually voted on this as a board the last time in terms of directing staff to go forward, but we hadn't provided any specifics on it in terms of timing and everything. So the reason it's coming back as an agenda item again has a lot to do with that, because there are definitely some options in the way that this can be approached. And if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I'd like to kind of highlight that a bit because it's so agenda driven, excuse me, or well, timeline, calendar driven. Just to set in frame of reference, the first meeting for the board in January is the 14th. And the second meeting for the board in January is the 21st. Now, the majority of terms for memberships lapse on the 17th of January. So that kind of creates a push function for things needing to be brought to the board meeting on the 14th. And if we take a look at what the time frame is that's needed to be used, of course, we've got the 2 weeks where it has to be published, but we need to probably put another week in there for the actual full receipt of applications and for the staff to be able to provide those to the directors for their review for consideration. So we're really talking 3 weeks, which would put the date that we need to be able to have the advertisements out and notifications out that this is happening for December 24th, which of course is impractical. So it actually draws back from there. So it really does require an immediate reaction by the staff, and to be able to also direct the process of distribution of information and receipt during the same time that we're trying to go through our strategic planning. So the other potential is to push it out to the 21st. So in reality, what would happen is that memberships would come to the end on the 17th. And so basically their terms of office would lapse. So we could let that happen and have that open for a couple of days, basically, and still go through our process for supporting the meeting on the 21st. And if we, think in terms of those 3 weeks again, that would back us off to just the end of December before New Year's. Again, not the best timing in terms of the public knowing about it and being able to respond, and the staff still having to support it over that difficult time period. So another potential option would be to unilaterally extend the terms of all of the board memberships out to give us and them enough breathing room, and give staff enough breathing room to be able to support this process in a more specific and progressive way of going through information. So the 2 board meetings, if we were to entertain doing that, the 2 board meetings in February are February 11th and February 18th. And if we still consider that same 3-week time period and back off of it, that would say that the advertisements need to be out by January 21st, or if for the latter meeting that month, it would be the information needing to be out by January 28th. In either circumstance, the time relief would probably, be of benefit for any number of people. I don't know that the members of the standing committees would, be adverse to having their terms of office extend for, a shortened period of time just to be able to help facilitate this. So the only thing that we'd need to do additionally to be able to take this third option is to unilaterally extend the terms to either the 1st or second meeting date. So either to February 11th or February 18th.
Madam President,
Yes,
I'm
Mr.
sorry to
Kermit.
interrupt. I don't think formal action is necessary on that item, and we want to stay Brown Act compliant. The general rule is that a committee member keeps his or her seat until her successor is appointed.
Oh, okay.
So current members would simply keep their seats until the board replaces them or reappoints them.
All right, well, excellent. It seems that we have a very viable option then, and
Yes, it's like,
it would maybe be a matter of our just deciding whether or not the actual choices of the memberships would happen on the first or the second meeting in February. And in fact, that might be just a good way to be able to carry forward in dealing with the committee memberships as it is. So I would appreciate any feedback from folks about what they're feeling, what their feelings are on these. Vice President Howell?
I make sure yes, I think it's a very good idea. And I think I would suggest that we go for the second meeting in February. And once we establish the practice, then it can continue and we shouldn't hit this problem again. I'd also suggest, though, that maybe that this is an aside, that the process for recruitment could start a little earlier than what we actually
Absolutely
require.
right. It gives us a time frame of being able to do that, and I agree with you. That would it's yeah. The extending that period would be very helpful in terms of the overall process and the response from the community.
So I've definitely, I strongly suggest, I see everyone nodding their heads, so I think I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move that henceforward, the official terms of the standing committees commence on the second meeting, the second board meeting of February's following an election. In other words, every 2 years. So the second February after the November, the previous, I don't know how to, the second February after an election. How's that?
Well,
the second meeting in February, second meeting in the February after an election.
Following, following
Yeah.
the election.
Okay.
And following a board election.
I'll second that.
Madam President.
Okay, so Vice President, if I understand correctly, Vice President Howell's motion was to, I shouldn't try to paraphrase for you. Vice President Howell, just for consistency, would you want to restate it?
Well, let me defer to Mr. Carmel for a moment. I see his hand there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to keep interrupting.
Not at all.
The motion is outside the description of the agenda item, which is
okay.
Discussion and consideration to direct staff to advertise for open positions on all standing committees.
Oh, okay. So why don't we do it this way? We just included in our direction to staff that so it won't be from now until time immemorial, it'll be just this one. And then when we hit the bylaws, we can actually make the change. So how do we reword this? Maybe Mr. Carmel, can you suggest an appropriate wording?
Isn't your motion to direct staff to advertise for open positions on all standing committees forthwith?
Forthwith, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the question I just had on that was the timetable for directing staff. Is there a date at which the process starts? In other words, are we going to set that or just say as soon as practicable for them? Yeah.
Right, and
it'll get done.
The second meeting in February is February 18th. So
we have plenty of time.
By practicality, I mean, we could ask them to launch no later than, the middle of January or something, I suppose, if you wanted to do that, just to give them additional time or give additional time on the back end.
Another reason, if I may, I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
One reason for starting the process maybe a little earlier than what the rules are actually requiring, and we might want to consider this going, not now, but just in general. Again, we're looking for 15 people. I think it might be we need to have a long enough process that if we're not getting as many applications as we would like, we need to go out personally and recruit people. So I think we need to allow ourselves a little space. So I would recommend that we start earlier than the requisite 2 weeks, just to give us more time. I don't know it's going to be a problem, but I could foresee that it might be.
Well, I think that the wording that Mr. Carmel provided by saying all standing committees forthwith pretty much
does it.
Takes care of it as far as this motion is concerned and this agenda item. And perhaps Vice President Howell, you and I can work with GM Weigold in terms of the best way to staff that out and provide sufficient time. Is that satisfactory for you?
Works for me. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. The motion then, if I understand it, is direct staff to advertise for open positions in all standing committees forthwith.
Makes it easy.
And is that's acceptable as motion from you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Vice President Howell? Okay, in a second.
Yes.
Ms. Dean, is that still okay?
Karen, yeah.
All right, fine. Thank you. And Osana, would you please take the roll call?
Yes, Director Howell.
Aye.
Excuse me. Vice President Howell. Director Dean.
Yes.
Director Farmer.
Yes.
Director Gray.
Yes.
And President Steidel.
Yes.
5 yeses.
Thank you.
And no zero.
Madam President, I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
In terms of the content of the application, is it appropriate to say anything about that at this point?
Well, I think that why don't we have that discussion? Because it really wouldn't address the agenda item. So it probably needs to be at least an initial conversation offline, maybe with you, between ourselves and Mr. Weigold, and we'll see what
Sure.
if there's anything additionally that needs to be brought forward on it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 5H. Mr. Weigold?
Yes, President Steidel, agenda item 5H is discussion and consideration to establish an ad hoc committee to review board and standing committee bylaws regarding standing committee appointment procedures. It is recommended that the board discuss and consider these items and provide staff guidance.
Okay, excellent. Entertain any public comment that anyone may have regarding this agenda item. I don't see any hands up right now. Osana, is there any written comment that you've received regarding this agenda item? No. All right. This really, I guess, could be viewed almost like a cleanup agenda item, just to make sure that the bylaws are aligned between the board and the committee bylaws for any other actions that we've taken as far as this election process. I personally am not expecting there are a lot of significant changes that would happen as far as the bylaws are concerned, because they've been being fine-tuned over a period of time, but there may be some things that need to be addressed within them. But the majority of this, I'm imagining, will be related to this standing committee membership. So is there any comment from anyone about the content here?
From us?
Director Gray?
Yeah, question on harmonizing. I know there is some there are differences between the board bylaws section and the committee bylaws sections on details of the process. Now, if there's a conflict, is it ad hoc committee's responsibility to figure out which way it goes, or we just go with the
board,
with the
yeah,
committee, the
board
version?
bylaws take precedence.
Board bylaws take precedence. Okay.
Yeah, and generally there may be an outline of something within the board bylaws, but the details for execution sometimes reside within the standing committee. Yeah. And this process is one of them.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask if there's anyone who'd like to participate in this ad hoc. Vice President Howell.
I'm willing to volunteer. So-
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other volunteers?
Oh, Karen?
Director Dean.
Director Dean.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you both very much for taking this on. It's appreciated. So the ad hoc, which has been formed, consists of Vice President Howell and Director Dean. And I don't think there's any additional action that needs to be taken on this, is there, Mr. Carmel?
Typically do take a formal action on it.
We do. All right. Even with the ad hoc. Okay. Thank you. Everything's a learning process. So that being the case, then we need to direct a motion on this. I'll entertain a motion for Vice President Howell and Director Dean to be established as the ad hoc for the review of the bylaws.
So moved.
Director Gray?
I so move.
Thank you. In a second?
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call, please, Osana.
Yes, for motion for the ad hoc committee to review the bylaws and everything else in 5H. Director Gray.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
Director Dean.
Aye.
Vice President Howell.
Aye.
And President Steidel.
Aye.
Thank you.
And for clarification, I understand that we need this back sometime in January, right? January, the first meeting in January, is that true?
That would,
Because
in an ideal world.
we actually, that actually could, I go to the second
Okay.
meeting in January probably, but it would probably be a preference to do it the first. But maybe we need to take a look at our agendas for January and determine what the best fit on that might be, Vice President Howell.
Okay. Well, yeah, between you and me, we can, I think between Karen and me, we can probably have something ready for either one of those. And so it'll be just, yeah.
Okay. And what that does then is take us back to the top of the agenda items for business and 5A. So General Manager Weigel, would you please?
Yes, President Steidel, agenda item 5A is the discussion and consideration to direct the policy committee to develop an outdoor lighting policy. Staff recommends that the board of directors discuss and consider directing the policy committee to develop an outdoor lighting policy. Director or Vice President Howell would also like to complete the discussion or presentation of this item.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Howell?
Well, I wasn't really planning to do more of it.
Let me, wait, just fucking, I'd like to be able to check to see about any public comment first. I'm not seeing any, and do we have any written public comment, Osana?
Checking now. No public comment.
Okay.
No written comment either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then moving forward, Vice President Howell.
Okay, yeah, this is what you have in front of you is actually the report from the committee. I had very little, there's very little of my work in here. This is the committee talking to the board and recommending that there be an outdoor lighting policy. And then what they're saying here is why, let's see. Yeah, it outlines the discussion, which is that, yes, the district is responsible for lighting. And I was interested to receive from General Manager Weigel some of the, from 2006 and earlier information. So should there be any questions, whether that's in our purview, it looks based on what I just saw that we do actually have some responsibilities. So That's the first section, is that we're responsible for lighting in on our district properties. And then also certain of the community street lighting. Now, my understanding is that it's not necessarily all the street lights in Cambria. I'm not clear about that. The material I was reading seemed to refer largely to in the main section of town and not the outlying areas. So I'm just not clear at all. But in the committee, in discussing this, then lays out the reasons why perhaps the district should consider a policy. And then it also is suggesting, I think, perhaps some of the concerns that might be addressed in that policy. In particular, let me see. There seems to be, I guess the question is, do you want, this is their recommendation. So I guess the question is whether you want them to go further with this in greater detail and come back to you with an actual full-on policy. If this is something that you think maybe you'd rather wait on, that's okay too. My approach here on this one was just to advise the committee that it's not out of, at least so far, hasn't been out of order for them, if they do see a need, to suggest to the board that there might be such a need. It then, of course, is up to the board to decide whether that need needs to be filled. So I think, and perhaps the reason that this came out is that there is some interest in maintaining Cambria as a dark sky place. And if it is the district's intent to support that effort, then probably the district does need to be considering the type of lighting that it is in those areas where it's responsible. Now, I did notice that in the, where was it? It seemed to me that it's not without some expense. So I'm not certain that short of asking the committee for a more complete policy to look at, I don't know that there's any need for board action on this, other than to say, oh, thank you, committee, and we'll think about it, or please go forward, or forget it. I think those are kind of the options that we have here. I don't think we're asking us at this, unless you want to actually come up with such a policy in this meeting. I don't think that wasn't our intention anyway. Yeah. It was just say, is this okay? Shall we go forward with this, or shall we not? So the committee stands awaiting your decision on that.
Okay, so I guess the question is, first to the board, is there anything that you'd like to address about this right now, or would you like to refer this to be a component of what we're going to be discussing in agenda item 4B? Director Gray?
Yeah, I would go with the latter suggestion, that we take it up as part of the discussion in 4B.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Director Farmer? Can you unmute yourself?
I'm so used to not muting myself. So I just want to make sure Vice President Howell a moment ago alluded to the fact that our street lights that we're responsible for are mainly in the business area. From what I understand, this is what I gather from hearing what people are saying, is that it's mainly in residents up in the Lamert area that are concerned about the dimming of street lights in their area. They'd like to have as little light as possible. So I don't know how the district would be addressing that, because maybe those are county street lights. So I'm just bringing that up.
Thank you, Director Farmer. And that could be something, if the committee is directed to go forward with this, then that's probably one of the items that need to be part of the consideration. So do I hear a motion to move this agenda item A for non-action by the board right now, other than to move it to a consideration under agenda item B?
I move to do that.
Okay.
Second.
And a second. Okay, so by Director Dean and motion and seconded by Director Gray.
All right.
So could you do roll call on this, please, Asana?
Yes, yes, I will. So to move this to a non-action item to 5B, Director Dean,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Yes.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Vice President Howell.
Well, I'm in favor of the motion. I think it's appropriate for me to abstain on this one.
Okay. And President Stidel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. And we'll move on then to 5B. Mr. Waggle, would you please introduce the agenda item?
Yes, President Stidel, agenda item 5B is discussion and consideration regarding policies to be considered by the policy committee. Staff recommends that the board review the Cambria Community Services District Policy Handbook Index and discuss policies to be considered by the policy committee. Staff recommends that the board of directors provide direction to the policy committee for continued review of the CSD policy handbook, compare with the current CCSD policies, and make recommendations to the full board to consider. And President Howell had asked also to for some time to present as well on behalf of the policy committee.
Certainly. What I'd like to do first is entertain any public comment. And I don't see any hands up in the attendees area. So Osana, are there any written comments?
Not written either, no.
Okay. Thank you. Then Vice President Howell, you had some comments you'd like to make to the board.
Well, yeah, it's well, just to give a little context, excuse me. One reason, originally we were tasked as, when the policy committee was originally formed, when Director Rice was the chair, and this was early on, the committee really not having any particular direction, adopted a direction and then came to the board to have that confirmed, which was that they would go through the CSDA handbook looking at policies, and that they, as we go forward, that we would use their numbering system as we go forward with our own policies. So there were those two items. It was also decided by the committee at that time to simply take the policies in order. This was the decision of that committee as it was relayed to me. Because the committee did not want to be seen as cherry picking certain policies due to whatever biases that the various members might have. So it was a way of avoiding any appearance of doing anything other than just marching through. And while that was perhaps a good way to begin, because there was really it was starting in something of a vacuum, it's not necessarily proven practical as we go forward, because the immediate concerns of the board or other concerns have come up. And so we basically stopped marching through. And the other thing I should say about that, as you're looking at, this is very useful. And I do propose that we continue to use this as a framework. Excuse me just a second here. Because it does allow us to see where we might find gaps, where we might say that an area that hasn't been addressed, perhaps, that needs to, it's a way of looking at, it's understood that not all the policies in the handbook are germane to a district such as ours. So that's understood. We wouldn't duplicate all of them. But on the other hand, it is a reasonably exhaustive list of the various types of things about which there can be policies. So from that point of view, it's serving as a good framework. And apropos of that, I'm not prepared to give you today, but I did and I would have loved to have handed this work off to somebody, but it wasn't possible. So I've been doing it myself, is to actually take this and inventory the existing policies that we have at the district, where they are, what drive are they located on, or where are they published, when were they done, what are there multiple versions, that kind of thing. So eventually, and this, I'm now at the stage of that work where I'm going to need staff time to help me go through some of this. So I basically, that project is in abeyance right now. But as we go forward, I think at some point it will be useful to have such an inventory. So, and that can be as presented in the nature, perhaps a progress report at some point down the road. The other, so what's governed us and how we have, why we are doing what we're doing, when we're doing it, seems to be governed by a number of things. One, of course, is concerns that have been mentioned one way or another by board members or by the board as a whole. And so we have undertaken some policies or looking at policies based upon that. Unfortunately, I think our processes have perhaps not been as rigorous as they should have been in this regard, and where we may have taken an expression of interest by one or two board members as a instruction to go forward. And I'm thinking that in the future, which is one reason why I brought the lighting to you, is that I think as we go forward, short of this generalized work that we're just looking for gaps and things like that, which can progress in any case. But in terms of what the committee is actually working on and discussing, I prefer that they come to us via a motion on the board so that we have a commitment, because on more than one occasion, and it's no one's fault because we're talking almost a 2-year period, and I hardly remember what happened last year. But we sometimes something gets brought to the board, and the board says, "Oh my God, why are you doing that?" Or and it may well be that some director at some meeting in the past had expressed a concern, and so we've said, "Okay, fine, we'll go work on that." Now that we're not short of things to work on, I don't think we need to be doing that. And so, yeah, we need a more formal process in that regard. It also will reduce the level of frustration that the committee can experience sometimes. So I do want to mention that. On the other hand, though, and this is more general, and then I can answer questions regarding, in fact, I will go through a little bit of what you're actually looking at. But there is one other concern that I had going on, and this is something that I don't know if we can want to discuss it today, but it is something, the way, I mean, each of us probably has a different view or a slightly different view of the function of these various committees and what they're supposed to do. But one thing which one approach I've taken on my own, largely because we don't have direction in this area, is that it's not only does the committee do work for us, they advise us, so they do research and we get the benefit of their brains and their that kind of thing, but it's also a chance for members of the community to bring forward concerns. Now, and that may not be the way we want to do that, but that is how we have been operating to some degree. And so I did allow, if a committee majority wanted to discuss an item, I mean, not to say that it would go anywhere beyond the committee, but if they wanted to talk about it, if the majority of the committee did decide to do that, then I would put it on the agenda. And there are arguments both for and against that position. In this case, to put it on the agenda only means that we would discuss it. And it might well be that it would never go farther than that. Or it could happen, as in the street lighting case, where the committee is sufficiently concerned to actually do up a recommendation that they wanted the board to see and to make a suggestion to the board that perhaps a policy might be desirable. So that's an area where it's a little hard to say. So having said that, that's more background. I will just very briefly comment a little bit on the writing that you have in front of you. So if you will look, in the process, you'll also see there are some definite areas where we have simply avoided doing anything. But because the committee started at the top, when they first started, they started with section 1000 and just started working down through that. And most of what you see there was actually handled before, during Director Rice's chairmanship. The areas at the, let's see, if you'll see that 1015, about 4 down, the board secretary, the board did agree not to utilize that policy, although that was one that the committee actually was pretty adamant about. So I think they were a little bit displeased on that one. But the board said, no, we don't need that. Down in the—
And Direct Vice President Howell, to ask a question, I apologize just for understanding. When you're referencing board here, are you referencing the policy board? Or are you talking about the board of directors?
Thank you. When I use board, I'll refer, that's the board of directors, that's us.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll say the committee. Does that?
Great.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, good point. So the committee, the committee wanted to do something about the board secretary, but the board basically said this is not, we don't have a board secretary, we don't need one, and this is not important. As you go down 1045, 1050, and 1055, that's the legal counsel and auditor, overview of the general manager's role, and legislative advocacy. Those basically have been postponed indefinitely. They never actually came out of subcommittee. And at some point, I just decided that I got tired of having agenda items get continually pushed off, so I just postponed them. So the committee is not looking at those and would not unless they were instructed to do so. At least that's the position I would take now. On administration, we'll come back to that. So section 2000, I'll come back to that in a minute. Risk management, we have not discussed, and in some things, I'm not even sure that would be appropriate. There's many things in here that are probably more appropriate for the general manager that are really not appropriate. And for example, I would, short of just some very broad guidelines as to emergency response, for example, or preparedness, a policy that the district shall be prepared for emergencies would be a suitable policy. How the manager decides to do that is probably more up to the manager. But anyway, so we probably, there's many of these things we probably would not get into or get into at a very high level. Communication and technology, we haven't really touched yet. Although I do see that there might be some issues in there that we might want to look at. For example, use of social media. What do we do? Do we have some generalized policy about public complaints, things of that nature? The area is section 3000. There's a couple of policies that were brought that somehow got onto our agendas and which have been postponed. But in general, because personnel is really an issue more with the unions and governed by the MOUs with the unions, it's not an area that, except perhaps at an extremely high level, it's not an area that we would want to get into. I mean, by high level, I mean a statement like all employees shall be treated well or something. Very, very high level stuff we might want to do, but a lot of this stuff goes without saying in any case. The two that did unlawful harassment and whistleblowing policy have both been postponed indefinitely. And I believe that, I mean, there are stuff in our personnel rules about that. Now, I would say that if the board instructed us, or if the general manager asked us to assist in reviewing, say, a policy that was really, I mean, we'd be more than happy to do that. But it's really, when we go into the manager's area, I've been discouraging people from trying to mess around with the actual functioning of the district. It's not really, that's not policy.
Vice President Howell, I have a favor to ask. I think that what we're talking about here is very important. I want to be able to provide the opportunity with you for your your standing committee to feel like they're involved in doing work that is important and contributory. However, can we possibly move it along a little bit, because we still have a number of agenda items and we have all of the reports ahead of us, and we're it's moving on towards 4 o'clock. So anything you can do to condense would be appreciated.
We'll speed this one up. So unless you guys have any questions about any of these areas, I'm going to jump just very briefly. I'm going to just simply say, give you some information that's not on your, that's in your writing, but there's some additions that need to be made. On the issue about the board of directors, and you'll see 4150 filling vacancy on the board of directors. That's actually coming to our, that will be on one of our upcoming board meetings. So that's actually ready for, it's going through a final iteration just to be blessed one more time by the committee, and then it'll come to the board. Reimbursement of standing committee members' expenses. That is actually a policy that we devised, and it's got a new number. That's our own. We tried to find something within the CSDA system that works. And so what you have is under board, you have a whole section about standing committees that wasn't there before. The only other thing to tell you about is at the very bottom of the page. Okay, homeless policy, that's coming up at one of our upcoming meetings very soon. Email.
Vice President Howell?
Yeah.
Are there actually 3 members of your committee that are serving on that?
Shouldn't, oh, let's see. Yeah, because the committee is 4, so 3 can be, because no, the committee is 6.
No,
so,
6.
Yeah. There's 5
No,
members.
there's.
So according to Tim, according to council, 4 members, even though the director doesn't normally vote, he could vote under certain circumstances. He or she could vote. So since the
no, it isn't a matter of voting. It's a matter of participating on the ad hoc.
In other words, it's not. Yeah, we could have up to 3 without a Brown Act violation. I think I may have interrupted you, Vice President Steidel. Is that what you're?
No. I mean, if that's the case, and if that's a clarification, that's different than the actual use of ad hocs, where 3 would constitute a majority of the group, then that's a different. Yeah.
In this case, it doesn't. Although often it's hard to find 3 people that want to work on something, but yeah, there have been occasions. Thank you for bringing that up, though, because it is a little bit of a weirdness there.
And so for Mr. Carmel, just for verification, in a subcommittee environment where the committee is 5 people, you can have 3 people participate in a subcommittee environment.
No, in a situation where you have 6, you can, because it's not a quorum. When there's 5, you can only have a committee of 2.
Right. And Ms. Duffield?
So keep in mind that the chairperson is not voting.
True.
On all these committees.
He has the right to vote.
The chair can vote in the case of a tie.
Right.
Now, according to Robert's rules, there are other certain, but in our rules, they can only vote in the case of a tie.
Okay, Director Dean?
My understanding was in the standing committee where there are 5 committee members and a chair, that's a total of 6. So a quorum would be 4. Am I correct, Mr. Carmel?
That's correct.
Now, there is something, I mean, we could, and this might be worth considering in talking about the bylaws, we could specify a different quorum. So if we wanted to say, in other words, we could do that, and that might be worth talking about.
That may be something for consideration. So I won't use more time for it. It was just that I was thinking in that context. Okay.
It makes total sense. Anyway, just in the interest of moving along, disaster preparedness and vets hall fees down at the bottom there, those are postponed indefinitely until something happens that brings them forward. So that's the state of affairs. I'm not quite sure what we're asking you here. What are we actually talking about?
I could,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it would be, I believe that there's been awareness that the policy committee is balancing or has a lot of balls in the air because of actually a lot of the process that you had described before. And I have to say that the same, I've had, similar thoughts in terms of what you had laid out in the way that perhaps the policy committee should be getting direction to work being done on the policies, and that I think first and foremost, what policies do we have as a district is more to the point than the CSDA list. And I agree with you, and you indicate that you've been working toward that. And then just a general review of items that perhaps would be for consideration that could be brought to the board's attention and say, want to think about these things. The one question I would ask is that in addition to looking at existing policies and how old they are and the possibility of needing to be revised, are there any policies that the staff or the GM has requested and that are not currently being addressed?
That's a good point.
Because I think that that's kind of gotten lost in the framework of things too, and kind of dropped down to the bottom. So I don't know that there's a good assignment of what's needed and what needs to go consecutively in some action. And I think that probably the other piece is that the board needs to be much more sensitive to the number of policies being assigned to the policy committee, and perhaps there's something that can be done that said that no more than 2 or 3 policies should be considered by the committee at any one time, so that you're not overloaded. And then as soon as one falls off, another one can be assigned. And so there's some kind of, expectation of time frame that something can be taken through committee. So with that, all of that in hand, could this fall out in terms of the review that's going on with the bylaws in some way? Is there something that could be crafted along those lines or get some more specific definitions?
Why don't let Director Dean and I work on that a little bit and see what we can come up with. But you're right. I think there is, just as a general statement, this is the last thing I'll say on this, unless you guys want to talk more, is that I think just in general, whatever the policy committee does, it needs to do what the board wants first. Now, if there's any time left over, then they could talk about something else. And I think that would be
or bring things to the board's attention for consideration. Right. Yeah. And I think that that's a valuable statement also, Vice President Howell. Well, if you and Director Dean would be willing to take that on as part of what you're doing as far as the bylaws, or see if that there's a manner in which that can be reflected in the bylaws, I think that would be valuable. What about the rest of the board members? How do you feel?
Yeah,
Director Gray?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think the bylaws in describing the responsibilities and powers of the committee should be much more specific and focused that way. One suggestion I would make is that looking over this list of policies, so many of them are operation or personnel, financial, operational. The expertise of our expertise really isn't up to the job of analyzing them. I think these a lot of the proposals, even from the board, I think have to go through staff. Staff has to be asked, like, what is, do you need to work on these things, or what's the staff's opinion of what needs to be done? I think needs to be considered. But the general rule, I think, is that policies that go to the policy committee, they have to come as requests from the board. I don't think, I can think the policy committee can do its own exploratory work, but I think its responsibilities have to be limited to advising the board on stuff the board is asked for advice on.
Right. Okay,
Yeah, I think that's a general rule, I think.
okay.
Yeah, that seems logical.
Yeah.
But it is the
Right.
board that sets the policy.
Right,
so-
board sets policy. I mean, that's our job, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not,
So,
I guess what I-
Director Howell, in the discussion you were having, where you indicated that there may be things that the committee membership themselves may want to discuss, that, necessarily haven't been directed by the board, but just in terms of general discussion. Certainly, obviously, however you want to handle that for your committee, for your standing committee is, perfectly appropriate. The only thing I would caution is to make sure that when that's happening, that they're well aware that they shouldn't be accessing staff time to be able to address questions.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Speaking of staff time, though, if I may, and this, I keep saying this is the last thing I'm going to say. If I get the sense that what this board would like is for me to continue with, finish the inventory, figure out what we've got and what we might need. So I'm at the point where it is going to require some staff time. So I would like, maybe there needs to be some instruction to staff on this, maybe a motion or something.
Well, I think perhaps a conversation that you can have directly with the GM.
I'll do that.
Get some feedback from him about, what staffing is and what is the best time frame to be considering those kinds of things and where it should be coming from. I think that can happen in a simple way and not have to worry about emotion directing it.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all of the information. It I think prompted the conversation that we needed to have. And I think it sounds like Mr. Director Farmer, there wasn't anything that we had heard from you directly. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this?
Just one very minor item. And I appreciate the comments that everyone has made. Like I said, this is very minor. In all of these policy items here, there's 4 with regard to subcommittees that have been indefinitely postponed. And John Rohrbaugh has been one of those members, but he has since resigned, and Leslie Richard has taken his place. So at some point, that just probably needs to be updated. Other than that, I don't have anything more to say.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Farmer. All right, I don't know that there's any additional consideration that needs to happen here, or maybe the consideration actually is directing the formation and outline of how this is handled to be part of the bylaws review being performed by yourself and Director Dean. Does that sound okay to you?
Yes.
And how? All right. If that's the case, and if that's the motion, do I hear a second on that?
Well, let's see. I'd second it, but who moved it?
Who moved it? Actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
The president can do it.
Motion from the chair. Yeah.
No, the president can move something.
Yeah,
That's
he can
okay.
move.
Right.
The chair can move. The chair can move. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Moved by President Seidel and seconded by Vice President Howell. And so we can move on to a roll call vote. So Sana, if you're ready.
Yes. President Steidel,
Yes.
Vice President Howell,
Yes.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
Director Gray.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I think that'll be a wonderful opportunity to help get this. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to Agenda 5C then. And GM Weigold, if you would please introduce this agenda item.
Yes, President Steidel, agenda item 5C is discussion and consideration to adopt resolution 55-2020 regarding the continued state of local emergency. It's recommended that the board discuss and consider adoption of this resolution declaring a continued state of emergency in the Cambria Community Services District due to the coronavirus pandemic. We've outlined for the board, a status on billing. As you can see, to date, there have been 87 late payers for a total of 26,000. But of those 87, we only have 5 outstanding right now for a total of $2,366. So it's I put hats off to Pam Duffield and her staff for working with all of our customers on payment plans, and that they can all work through. That's done on an individualized basis. And so I'm really happy to report that we're in a really good place. We're continuing to monitor that though, and Pam will probably report it as part of her report, but we've extended the no shutoffs and the no late fee policy.
Okay, excellent, thank you. I'd like to take public comment at this time. I don't see any hands currently raised in the attendees. So Osana, do you have anything in terms of written comment? No, all right. Okay, we'll move on then. So as far as the resolution itself, this is a continuing resolution, so I don't know that there's anything of significance for discussion, maybe other than whether we would, again, at this point, want to entertain to push this to a consent item, agendized item for the future, rather than having to have it as an active regular item, business item. And one of the benefits, of course, is putting it to consent is the amount of time that's used, but I think that there are lesser issues now in terms of the billing impacts, and we can certainly have information be part of the consent that would indicate whether or not the general manager had to make use of any of his special powers during the time period. So that would be an obvious statement of position at the time that we could always pull from consent and have conversation about if necessary. And we could increase the specifics of the resolution itself to make reference to the points that were put in place with the initial resolution in terms of what that represented and the extension of what the emergency powers defined in terms of, you know, the dollars and so forth. So I guess I would, is there any comment from the other members of the board? Director Gray?
Yeah, on the question of whether to make this a consent item, does that need to have a formal motion, or is that just a decision of an agenda preparation
No, we
decision?
need to take consideration
For
to
it.
say that
other-
from this point
yeah.
on, it's not regular business. It would move to a consent
Okay.
item.
And the other question is there any interest in simply making this coterminous basically with the county's public health emergency declaration and just leaving it in place rather than having to come back to it every month?
And basically, that's what would happen with with it going to consent.
In effect, yeah.
And it talks to the local state of emergency declaration, so it's covered in that way. Yes. Any other comments?
Yeah, I would just like to ask, well, if we're going to adopt this particular item here, make a motion to adopt it, can we add to it where we say local state of emergency declaration and move this item to consent agenda in the future?
Well,
can we do that?
Let me say, Mr. Carmel, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can go ahead and vote on this and take consideration on it. And then when the next agenda comes up, it will just be moved to consent at that point. That it wouldn't have to be directed there by motion. Is that a true statement?
That is a true statement. You and the vice president would normally consider that at our agenda review meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
that was my question. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Vice President Howell?
So I agree. I think that the issue would be as we go forward, depending upon the complexity of the situation, we could say, but I agree with you. Normally it could go on consent.
Okay.
But yeah, it is kind of, and remember, anyone can request that it be pulled.
And always pull it,
So,
right?
yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Well, then I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution 55-2020 regarding continued local state of emergency declaration. Director Gray?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Director
second.
Dean?
I think
Okay, oh, sorry. Sorry,
Director
Director
Farmer and I
Farmer.
we're
Everybody was
we're
coming
both
in.
All right.
jumping in at the same time there.
I have, yeah, a heartbeat ahead. Yeah, sorry
Yeah.
about
I think Director Farmer beat me to it.
that.
Might have, yeah.
No big deal.
You can have it, no
Okay.
big deal.
Thank you. So the motion has been stated and seconded. And Asana, can you read the roll call, please?
Sure. Was it stated by Gray and seconded by Farmer? Then?
Or,
Yes, that'll be fine.
Dean? Okay.
yeah,
All right. So then Director Gray,
yeah, aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
Vice President Howell,
Aye.
and President Stidel.
Aye. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So 5D is the next agenda item. And this is discussion and consideration of appointment of an ad hoc committee to review policy related to intent to serve letters. And I guess I will ask initially if there is any input or provision that is appropriate to this agenda item. Mr. Carmel?
I'm not sure I heard you clearly.
Oh, okay. The discussion, the item 5D, discussion consideration of appointment for an ad hoc committee for review of the policy related to intent to serve letters. Is there anything that we need to take into consideration in review of this?
Well, I think the staff report lays it out nicely. You know, there are liability issues associated with this issue. It's my understanding that this ad hoc will be reviewing the municipal code and related administrative provisions regarding the issues of intent to serve letters, but they won't be reviewing the existing commitment list. There are significant legal issues associated with the existing commitment list, and I recommend that it not be included. That would really be the only thing I would add.
Okay.
President Stidel, I think Osama's had her hand up.
Right, and I will, yeah, and I just realized that I didn't take public comment, did I? I apologize.
Yes, I have
So
one.
we are going to, yeah, we are going to backtrack here and immediately take public comment. Thank you, Asana, and thank you. Yes.
Would you like me to formally introduce the item?
Oh, geez, did I even go there? So sorry. Lost my concentration. I apologize. Okay. Yes. GMY Gold, would you please introduce the item?
Thank you, President Stidel. Agenda item 5D is discussion and consideration of appointment of an ad hoc committee to review policy related to intent to serve letters. Staff recommends the board discuss and consider appointing an ad hoc committee to evaluate current CCSD policy related to intent to serve letters. During last month's regular board meeting on November 11th, staff was directed to bring this item back to the board for discussion and consideration, and suggested tasks would include 2 of the items listed on the staff report, but further discussion, of course, to what include and not include per guidance from the board.
Okay, thank you. And moving on then to public comment, please.
Yes, I have one written comment and then we have two people's hands up.
Okay, let's take the audience or the attendees' comments first, please.
Okay, Elizabeth Bettenhausen, go ahead. Elizabeth, go ahead.
For some reason,
Maybe muted.
Dr. Benhausen, your microphone appears to be on. Is it okay? Yes, and now.
So can you now hear me, Madam President?
Yes, certainly. Thank you.
Excellent. Please let me make my screen smaller so I can read what I wrote to you earlier today. I am on 5D, the intent to serve letters item before you. The
Yes.
agenda says, discussing this, quote, the suggested ad hoc committee's task would be as follows. 1, evaluate the current policy related to ITS letters. This would include meeting with staff to discuss the current administrative procedures and the active list of ITS letters, which apparently the council says that is not appropriate. 2, develop recommendation for board consideration regarding modifications to the current policy and related administrative procedures if warranted. More explicit assignment of the task to the ad hoc committee when creating it. I recommend, therefore, that was the end of the quotation, sorry. I recommend to you, Board of Directors of CCSD, that the staff suggestion be amended by stating, 1, the reason or reasons evaluation is needed now. 2, the criteria by which the evaluation will be made. 3, the criteria by which modifications are developed to recommend to the board, and why an ad hoc committee is needed rather than referral to the standing committee on policy, because this is an evaluation of current policy. So those are my concerns. I hope that you take my recommendations into consideration, and thank you for being patient while my new webcam microphone did not connect me to you.
Cool.
Excellent. Thank you. Osana?
Thank you. And Christine Heinrichs, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for addressing the issue of intent to serve letters, but the subject, as indicated by District Council, is broader than that. District staff continues to approve permits for new construction in Cambria under a variety of guises. District approval of these permits has been a sore point between the district and the Coastal Commission. Regardless of the rationale the district presents, permits for new construction will be denied by the commission. The material in the staff recommendation for the next item on affordable housing includes more supporting information than this item, both of which involve water availability. I am grateful that the staff accepts that the Coastal Commission will deny the permits the district approves. Does this really need another ad hoc committee? The Coastal Commission has been clear in its guidance to the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. All right, and now I will do the written comment from Amanda Rice regarding item 5D, discussion and consideration of appointment of an ad hoc committee to review policy related to intent to serve letters. This item was prompted by 2 residential projects that were recently denied on appeal to the Coastal Commission, and I urge the board to focus on this concern and not get into how the policy and ordinances may impact residential waitlist positions or commercial projects. Regarding task 1, please consider adding "and ordinances" to task 1 as follows. Evaluate the current policy and ordinances related to ITS letters. This would include meeting with staff to discuss the current administrative procedure and the active list of the ITS letters. Regarding task 2, seems overly broad. I suggest the committee limit itself to only the existing commitments, excluding how to treat ITS for waitlist positions, which in my opinion would be premature. Regarding adding a task 3, please consider adding an item to the ad hoc committee tasks. one that was unanimously approved by the board on 11/20/20. From agenda packet, page 33, Director Rice moved to add an item to an agenda regarding the discussion and consideration of no new connections to the system. Director Howell seconded the motion and requested it come back in February. Recommended staff. Finally, if the staff you contemplate meeting with does not already include outside district counsel, Mr. Carmel, please clarify why not. Carmel and Nakasha have represented the district for over a decade and have a strong understanding of the legal and historical contexts involved. Questions for the committee to answer and report back to provide a better understanding of ITS process. What is the role of CCSD in the overall permitting process of SLO County for new residential projects, for remodels, for tear down, rebuild, for commercial projects? And what does a new residential project need from the CCSD to move forward in the county's permitting process? What is the final action taken under district authority? Final action equals moves the project beyond the district's authority. Please forward this email comment to all the directors. Amanda Rice. Thank you.
Thank you, Asana. So what I'd like to do, obviously, is open this up for conversation with the board members. And I recognize that this is a complex question. And one thing I will say up front is that perhaps the real value in ad hoc and addressing this matter is to gather some information for the questions that were asked, particularly related to the information that Director Rice put forward. And maybe by doing so, that would give us a much better position to understand what areas need to be looked at or considered. The other would be to just have the ad hoc committee be in review of policies or code as it relates to the existing documents, but potentially exclusive of what Mr. Carmel had mentioned, where the outstanding commitment list really is bound by legal constraints. So there isn't probably anything additionally that can be added or addressed to that. Yes, Director Dean.
Okay, so while the existing list is bound by legal constraints, part of the problem of public perception is that they think these things are being issued behind closed doors and they don't understand why. So I still think that even though the existing commitments are bound by legal restraints, they need to be brought before the board with that explanation. So at least the public sees that the reason these are being issued is because of legal restraints. You don't have to explain the legal restraints, but you know, it would take away the perception of this being done behind closed doors, in my opinion, if these intent to serve letters were just reviewed by the board with that slight explanation. Does that make any sense?
It does. I guess I will ask Mr. Carmel, if I may. I believe that was part of the description of information that was brought forward when those two had gone through reviews of the board, but I may be mistaken.
You want me to respond?
Pardon?
Did you want me to respond?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the existing commitment list, if one of the parcels that are on the list comes forward and wants an intent to serve letter and the process is changed, that'll have to go through the process is changed so that it's issued by the board. That's going to have to go through the board. It's going to apply to everyone. I just don't want anyone monkeying around with the existing commitment list because it's been there for 20 years. Everyone on it has been paying a minimum monthly billing for 20 years. Many of those on it were contractually bound through a settlement agreement to provide them with water service. And those are the things that concern me, the list itself. The process, it's up to the board how it wants intent to serve letters to be issued. And if the board wants to change the policy so that it's an exclusive board province, that's great. I have no problem with that. That would include the existing commitment list. I'm talking about monkeying around with the list itself.
Okay, Director Dean?
I'm not talking about monkeying around with the list itself. I'm just saying it should be brought up that these are going to be issued. Just that they're going to be issued because we have a legal requirement to do so, just so that the public knows they're issuing these, you know, and it's not being done behind closed doors for some other reason. That's all I'm asking.
Absolutely. Transparency is important.
Director Gray? I believe you're muted.
It sounds to me like without the existing commitment properties under purview, this ad hoc committee would have very little, wouldn't have much to look at, wouldn't have much to deal with. It's fairly, and you don't want to bring in waitlist positions at this point either. So it's kind of there's nothing maybe for it to deal with in terms of policy toward on intent to serve. I do think I agree with Director Dean that there's primarily a communication problem here, and it's communication not just with the public but also with Coastal Commission. That it has to be explained very clear to them what our obligations are, why these things happen, you know, and our, you know, basically our point of view, and it has to go two ways, both up and, you know, to the public and to the commission.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Yes, Vice President Howell?
Yeah, this came about, actually, I was a little surprised that this came out in this way, because as the resolution that Amanda referred to, the intent really is just that any future connections to the system, until we resolve some of these issues, that they be brought to the board. Not that the board would not do it, but right now in the code, certain things can be ministerially approved if it's under 3 EDUs. And what I'm trying to say is that we need to, I mean, it isn't that we're going to mess around with the commitment list, but it does need to be public. But in addition to the commitment list, there are also certain commercial transactions. So it was my intent in seconding the original motion that all connections to the system, as a temporary measure, that all connection systems to our systems come to the board with the understanding, with the very reason that if there is a legal obligation, that needs to be laid out, and it needs to be laid out to the public so they can hear it. Unless there's ongoing litigation, if we're doing an action that's just potentially subjecting this to a lawsuit, the public needs to hear that legal advice as well as the board. Right now, we get beaten up soundly all the time for doing what we are legally required to do, and I'm getting tired of it. I really want, the public needs to take some responsibility in this too. And so for them to take responsibility, they have to have the information.
Understand the implications, right? Okay.
So that's the intent of all that. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm hearing, I don't know that what we need to be doing is forming an ad hoc committee so much here, unless somehow that committee would come back with a suggested directive to us of the transparency of any connections coming to the board, because this isn't going to address that. I mean, this particular agenda item isn't going to address that. So if it's either we set this aside, or that an ad hoc is formed, and that the intended or expected output of that is some recommendation of how to handle the transparency related to hookups.
That could be, I don't know. I think if, oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Sorry,
No.
didn't mean to speak out of turn. I would say if we have directors who would be interested in doing that, I see no harm in it and possible good that could come out of the more. So if we have an ad hoc committee that's interested in reviewing that, and I kind of, it looks like perhaps Director Dean seems to, I see she's expressing an interest.
So before we go on, I believe Director Gray had a comment that he wanted to make.
I did not know. No.
Oh, you did not? Okay,
Not, no.
fine. All right. Director Dean, you're indicating that you'd be interested.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Director Farmer, was there something you would wanted to say? I didn't see.
Yeah, well, I have had my hand up for a while, and I think considering the fact that, you know, this particular issue has been a controversial and problematic one, not just within the community, but obviously at the Coastal Commission. I think anything that we can do, and I know this word transparency has been used recently, just to get some more clarity and maybe understanding, especially with Coastal, that we are addressing this matter in a fashion that will be an outcome that's productive or positive for Coastal. I think that necessarily needs to take place. And I would like to join Director Dean on this particular as possible.
Okay. All right. So I have Director Dean and Director Farmer who have volunteered for the ad hoc. And if we can also define specifically what we'd like to have this ad hoc do. Would anyone like to take a stab at that, or do you want me to, or?
There's two other people.
No, I will.
Up.
Oh.
There's Ray and John with their hands up.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So actually, Mr. Reigold, why don't we take your comment first?
Yes, thanks, President Stidel. In response to Director Dean's question, we currently advertise, or we currently publish all our intent to serve and will serves in the utilities report right now. To date, we've had 37 this year. So those are items like remodels, active service transfers, grandfathers. 37 is an awful lot if you're going to review every single one. So I just wanted to toss that out there for consideration as part of this. It's it would be a lot if we're giving verbal reports, but we are publishing that monthly, and Ray may have some additional information to share on that.
And I do think that what was under discussion is that if there were any new hookups. So in those
Exactly.
where you're talking about what those 37 represented, I'm assuming those would not be considered to be being brought forward to the board. It's just where we're dealing with new hookups. And Mr.
They're all grandfathered.
Oh, no, I understand, but I mean, just in terms of, and that's part of what the ad hoc would be taking a look at. Mr. D'Anzo?
Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you, President Seidel. I want to concur with the decision to support the staff decision, or the staff recommendation to form an ad hoc, because there are things that Tim Carmel already said. You know, there's misinterpretation with the commitment list and the active intent to serve letters, and there's a lot of details that are surrounding it. It seems like a simple issue at the forefront, but I think having an ad hoc where we can discuss these things in detail and have a really concise recommendation to bring to the board at a later date, I think that would be great. So that's my only comment.
Thank you. And Director Dean.
Okay, so while I realize that in the last few months, we have been getting a list of issued intent to serve letter, grandfathered meters, all of that. I'm not talking about going back and checking on all of those things. Those are done. What I'm talking about is any future intent to serves, will serves, act, any connections in the future, that it be brought before, the committee review it and bring it before the board before they are actually connected, so that we have transparency for the public. I'm not talking about going back and taking, looking at things that are already done. I was talking about future connections is what the ad hoc committee should look at.
Thank you. So it sounds like we would move forward to establish the ad hoc committee, and the parameters have to do with looking for or recommending a methodology for bringing information on new hookups to the board for transparency and discussion, and for the purpose of informing the public. Is that
That's a good.
not well stated, but is that what?
Yeah. Just to elaborate on that, I would so move that, but I wanted to elaborate too on informing the public. I think it'd be good for this committee to produce a report that explains the situation. That is, part of their work. In other words, what the constraints are, what the commitments are, just what the process is, and what the board can and can't do legally. Because I think that part of the misunderstanding is that people will obviously see the commitment list and think this is new. What is a new connection as opposed to a transferred connection and so forth. It'd be good for public education for them to be able to produce at least a brief report on what the situation actually is that the board is in, the district is in. So I second I so move President Seidel's motion, and that my further explanation is just to make the case for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And is there, and Vice President Howell, a comment or a second?
Second. That's the second.
The second, okay. So we have the motion by Director Gray and the second by Vice President Howell.
Okay, got it.
For the ad hoc, which consists of Director Dean and Director Farmer. Provide a recommendation on new, in the event of new hookups, to provide information on the background for the board consideration and for public transparency. Is that an acceptable? Okay.
It works.
It works, yeah.
Okay. Well, perhaps we can fine tune it a little bit. But
public education and transparency, maybe.
Public education and transparency.
And transparency, yeah.
Excellent. No, that's good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Gray. Okay, we have a motion and a second. So Osana, could you move to roll call, please?
Yes, Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice President Howell,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
and President Steidel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we, I believe, have moved through the regular business items.
Oh, one more.
Which would take us to the report.
5E.
There's one more.
5E.
5E.
Things over too fast.
So many of them.
What's next?
They just keep coming at you.
Thank you.
I think we're gonna get through this.
All right. GM Weigel, would you introduce 5E, please?
Yes, President Steidel. Agenda item 5E is receiving an update and a report from the Affordable Housing Ad Hoc Committee, and consider action to direct staff to partner with the County of San Luis Obispo on the design and implementation of the affordable housing program required by the North Coast Area Plan. Staff recommends receiving the report from the ad hoc committee and directing staff to partner with those agencies as recommended by the staff or the ad hoc report. And I'll turn that over to the ad hoc committee to continue the presentation.
Okay, what we'll do first is take public comment, please. Asana?
Yes, thank you for your patience. Elizabeth Bettenhausen, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have sent you also on this comment of mine, I have sent my comments earlier to you today, at least 2 minutes before you started meeting. So I wasn't able, for various reasons, to get it to you any sooner. But I will send you also the new book I've written for the children about bioadhesion in the tide pools, if you'd like it. Regarding 5E and the staff recommendation, the staff recommends what you've just heard. I have several questions. Number one, how is this agenda item related to the People's Self-Help Housing Permit already issued? Question number two, who exactly is, quote, SLO County, end quote, with whom the staff is conversing? Is it a whole board or department, individuals within several departments? I have no idea who SLO County is. Number three, completion of several studies by the staff are prerequisite to useful partnering with SLO County on this program. The staff says, quote, to move forward with an LCP consistent affordable housing program, staff will need to analyze the available retrofit capacity in Cambria and determine the number of affordable housing units that could be accommodated via demand offset. This effort intersects with board and staff goals to evaluate the efficacy of the water conservation and retrofit program as a whole. Staff will present further information on the water conservation and retrofit program in a future report to the board, end of quotation on page 50. My comment, this work should be done before the board directs the staff to, quote, partner with the County of San Luis Obispo, et cetera. My fourth point, the draft CCSD affordable housing program process flow that has been developed and is on page 52, very impressive chart, by the way, but it's incomplete because the prerequisite tasks I have just mentioned need to be in an additional column on the left. They must precede the other activities that are sketched out on this process flow chart. Number five, what is the relationship between 5D, intent to serve, and 5E on affordable housing? After listening to you discuss 5D, I would assume that the new ad hoc committee, in its specification to itself of what it's supposed to do, will take a look also at the affordable housing issue. I thank you very much. And if I can, I will switch to watching the condors, which I've missed half an hour of already in the condor program in the sanctuary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. Osana?
Thank you. Christine Heinrichs, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for addressing the issue of affordable housing. The Coastal Commission did approve a CDP for the People's Self-Help Housing Project under stringent conditions, which it set out. People's Self-Help Housing has thus far made no attempt to meet these conditions. Note that previous water conservation offsets are not eligible to meet these conditions. That's water that's already been conserved. Cambria is in need of a wider range of housing choices. As the COVID restrictions have affected visitor uses, please keep in mind the possibility of converting existing structures which already have water allocations to permanent housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. Osana?
Yes, thank you. And Crosby and Laura Swartz, go ahead. unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, President Steidel and members of the board. I have a comment for consideration by the Affordable Housing Ad Hoc Committee. As stated in the agenda package, the district must consider the impact of its affordable housing allocation policy on its ability to deliver water to all customers under all expected conditions. The most critical condition for the water supply is during periods of drought. For example, in 2014 and 2015, the district declared a stage 3 water shortage. Each customer was assigned a maximum water allocation based on the number of full-time occupants. To avoid surcharges and other penalties, each customer reduced their water usage to their allocated amount. As a result, the amount of water saved by low flow plumbing fixtures was limited. When every customer is using their allocated amount of water, more customers means more water demand. The goal of offsetting usage by additional affordable housing users must be analyzed for drought conditions as well as normal water supply conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sports.
Thank you.
Asana, are there any written comments?
No, there was only one, and I will double check real quickly. And
Was that Dr. Pettenhausen's?
no, that was the Rice's. So yeah, no, nothing else.
Okay.
Oh no, I did not receive that, Dr. Bettenhausen. No.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. With that in consideration, what really is being asked here is to provide direction to staff to continue in what is a partnership with the County of San Luis Obispo, which is predominantly at this point the planning department, if I'm not mistaken, on the design and implementation of the affordable housing program, which we have as a requirement within the North Coast area plan. So on the whole, what this is a status report of what had been done by the Affordable Housing Committee up until this point. And then additionally is the staff, predominantly Melissa and Ray D'Enzo, had interacted with county planning and also with Coastal Commission staff. There was definition of things that they wanted to partner in working through for resolutions so that we could address affordable housing on the basis of the requirements of the state and precepts of the county. So that is what this is about. And I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of whether we want to consider to direct staff to continue to participate in that way. So Vice President Howell, I'll defer to you as the other member of the ad hoc committee to see if I've stated this appropriately.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think you're basically, yeah, the work is going forward, and what we're really asking here is, should staff continue down this particular path? And I think President Steidel basically said everything that needed to be said on that. I do recommend, personally, I recommend that we do proceed with that. And in that regard, just so I can put a motion on the floor, if we have further stuff, I would say the following. I move that the board direct staff to partner with SLO County to develop an LCP consistent affordable housing program, which may include modifications to the district's current demand offset practices, and to draft correspondence to each party of the existing list. And let's see, who have informing them of the status of the program. I think I screwed up the last part there, but
well, that's well, whatever that is, that correspondent ends up being will happen outside of this anyway. So that's probably
language is clear.
I second
it.
Director Gray.
Second.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, we'll move to a vote then. Osana, please.
Sure. Vice President Howell,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
He's
Director
muted.
Farmer,
Oh,
One more time.
Director Farmer, you're muted.
My apologies. I'm abstaining from this.
All right.
okay. Director Dean,
Aye.
and President Stidel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Four
thank you all
ayes.
very much. All right, now I'm going to check a second time just to make sure that there isn't anything else
We're
that
done.
I need to address before I move on to the reports.
Gentleman Weigold has his hand up.
GM Wellgold?
I was just going to request a 5-minute break.
About 3?
All right. We may have to curtail our reports some, but I can understand that. Okay. How about we come back in at 5:46 then? Will that work for everyone?
446, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, bye. Well, no, but it's not going too badly, actually. Taking a break.
Tom didn't mute himself first.
I'll mute him. I'll
Thank
mute Tom. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't need that. I'm gonna take that off. Hmm. 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 Carlos is there.
Bob, are you, if you're available?
I don't see him here.
Yeah, I was going to indicate, I didn't know if he had to restart based on our break.
Oh, it looks like it's still recording, so we may be okay.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Howell. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're moving on to managers' reports. In particular, I think that one of the valuable reports to make sure that we have a chance to get today is the facilities and the utilities report, because there's a lot of information there, I think, for the community and everything too. What I'd like to suggest is I don't think that's going to happen in 10 minutes. Would the board be willing to extend another 15 so that we can be sure to hear these meetings or these reports? Director Dean?
May I suggest we extend a half an hour so we don't have to extend again in 15 minutes?
Absolutely, and if we don't use it all, that's fine. And if that's the kind of mechanism the board would like to use, that's
sure.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because we spend a few minutes
I
extending.
agree. I agree. Yeah. Historically, the board had always wanted just to use small increments, but I've been more than happy to take it for a half hour. Thank you. Is there then a motion and a second? Okay.
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting till 5:30.
Okay, fine. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Director Dean, thank you. So 5:30 it is. All right. Going to the manager's reports then, and starting with the general manager.
Point of order.
Jim Gold. Oh, Director
Don't we
Dean?
have to vote on the motion? Don't 4/5 have to agree?
Oh, yeah, it's just.
I apologize. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Could you take the roll call, please?
Did Vice President make the motion or Karen? Who seconded it? Director Farmer? Okay.
Yes, Director Farmer,
Okay.
and then Karen.
Okay, sure. To extend for another half an hour.
To 5:30.
To 5:30, excuse me. To 5:30. Director Farmer?
Why not?
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Gray? Oh, you're muted. I muted you earlier.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Vice President Howell?
Aye.
Aye.
And President Steidel?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So GM Weingold, you're.
Thank you, President Steidel. As you mentioned, I'm gonna accelerate through this report so we can get to Carlos Mendoza's homeless encampment presentation, which is significant because he'll take us through the last 5 years on the situation on CCSD properties around town. It's a huge success story. It's a lot on Carlos and his team that have been so persistent on staying on top of this. As you'll see, we're down to 1 encampment from, we had over 60, we had 62 last year. And so Carlos got the 1. Unfortunately, the 1 that we have is right on in everyone's eye, right across across the street on Highway 1. So everybody sees it, but it's really good news. I'll let Carlos go into that in a moment. Just a couple of quick items. Moving ahead on the skate park and the rodeo grounds contracts for design. Those come back, we'll go come back to the board, the commission, and potentially standing committees for review. This past week we had new director orientation for directors Gray and Dean. I wanted to report that one of the general manager powers that you authorized me is in use, because we have no less than 20 days to put together and institute a California Occupational Safety and Health Program Board for a requirement from the state. And so I wanted to report that got put to use right away. But other than that, no extraordinary actions taken by me for the pandemic. We're making preps and following closely the vaccine rollout. It looks like that all the utilities folks, operators will be part of phase 2. Even the fire department, first responders will take a back seat to the first tier. So because we've only got less than 2,000 doses for the entire county at this point, and the first round entitlement is 20,000 people. So you can see we've got a long way to go, and probably be another month or 2 before we get some vaccinations out there. With that, I want to turn it over to, pending your questions, I want to turn it right over to Carlos so he can take us through an update on his department, but also a presentation on the homeless.
Thank you, Dean Weigold. And Carlos? Looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody. Thanks for allowing me the time to provide you with a report. I actually have 2 reports, as General Manager Weigold mentioned. I'll be brief on the first report, just activities going on at facilities and resources. Just wanted to highlight one good event that we had last month, which was the annual tree planting event on Fiscalini Ranch. Great success on that event. We had great turnout from the community. We were able to plant over 350 Monterey pine trees on Fiscalini Ranch, and everybody had a great, safe time out there. The other item that I just wanted to mention was Mission Country Disposal and their weekly or their long week cleanup event that they typically have once a year or twice a year. As you recall, that got canceled this year due to COVID, and I reached out to them to see if they were going to be hosting one coming up, and they're penciling in a community cleanup week in March. And as we come closer to that, we'll make sure that we let you know whether that will be happening or not. My report is there on page 70 of the agenda with activities at facilities and resources, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on that report, whether it's on ranch, Pocket Park, or any other items. And if not, I'll be happy to do my second report on homeless.
Please.
So at the last Pros Commission meeting, I actually provided the Pros Commission with a report that has been attached to the agenda. General Manager Weigel wanted me to provide the board with the same report. And so you see several pictures and maps there, and I just wanted to provide you with a little more detail. And I'll go ahead and just run through the pictures for you and discuss, what they are. Let me see if I can share this with you.
Oh, good. Yeah.
All right. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So, yeah, as General Manager Weigel mentioned, I just wanted to, go through about 5 years worth of activities with homeless encampments on CCSD properties. So back in 2015, 2016, we were aware of some encampments on CCSD properties, but they were far and few between, just a handful throughout those years. And you can see a few pictures here of some encampments and campfires that we were able to find out there. We weren't really tracking encampments or mapping them or documenting them at that point because, like I mentioned, they were far and few between. At 2016, 2017, we were starting to notice a lot more homeless activity and encampments on CCSD properties. What you see here is a joint effort between the Land Conservancy of SLO, CCSD staff, and prison crews that were available to us at that point. And we're actually cleaning CCSD parcels that were given to us by the Land Conservancy right below Ramsey. Again, we weren't really tracking or mapping a lot of these encampments as they were starting to increase at that point. But at the end of 2017 and 18, we really started to notice just a lot of activities, homeless activities going on CCSD owned properties. And at that point, I started to track, to map and photo document, all of these encampments. I spent a significant amount of time, going through the Fiscalini Ranch and CCSD owned properties at that point, and we were able to map where all of these encampments were. This is a map of 2019. Basically, at the beginning of the year, we were able to identify 60 plus homeless encampments on CCSD properties. You sort of can tell where the encampments are occurring, and that's basically, along Santa Rosa Creek and in the Monterey Pine Forest. Some of these encampments were large. One in particular was probably about 100 feet long, very large. And what you see on the following pictures is what we were able to find in these encampments. A lot of trash, a lot of stuff that was left behind. Most of the encampments had been abandoned, but we did have quite a few that were still occupied at that point. Obviously, when you see these pictures and when we started to map the areas, it was quite shocking what we saw, gut-wrenching, and as I mentioned before, we had seen a few encampments in the past. So to go from just a few to over 60, in 1 year, how do you start the process of cleaning that up? And so, it was a huge effort to start the whole process. Throughout the year, I was in a lot of community forums, meetings with the sheriff department, with county staff, with Supervisor Gibson, with our legal team to figure out, the process for eviction and cleanup. And, it was a year-long multi-agency process to be able to clean these encampments. At the end of 2019, all 60 plus encampments have been cleaned up. So that takes us to the beginning of this year. And we, again, started to see new encampments pop up at the beginning of the year. And these are the sites that we were able to find. At that point, at the beginning of the year, we estimated between 15 and 20 encampments that come up again on CCSD-owned properties. You can see on the pictures that follow what those encampments look like. And in March, all of those encampments had been cleaned up. A few months ago, we saw a few more encampments pop up, and that was basically right across from Cambria Drive, what is known to some as Steelhead Park. And that's what those encampments looked like a few months back. All of those encampments were cleaned up with the exception of one that we have, which is the one that you see across from Cambria Drive. As Commander McDonald has mentioned, we have been meeting with the sheriff, CAP team, community action team, for the past couple of weeks, visiting the encampment, providing the occupants with, the contacts for services, the ability for them to go to a shelter. We now have a trash dumpster trailer out there for them to dispose of any trash that they have to assist them with that cleanup. During those site visits, we were able to find about between 5 and 7 people that are actually full-time living in that area. And as Commander mentioned, we're planning on doing a cleanup here at the beginning of January on that property there. So if we think about the numbers of encampments, if we take 2019, the 60 plus encampments that we cleaned up in 2019, and then we add all the encampments that we've cleaned up so far this year, and the encampments that we're going to be cleaning up in January, we will be very close to cleaning up about 100 encampments in the past two plus years. A lot of these encampments, obviously, a lot of the community isn't very aware of because they're hidden. They're sheltered, in the creek or in the forest. But what you also, or what the community probably sees the most is what you see. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually the encampments on Cambria Drive and what they look like at this point. Obviously, a lot of debris there, a lot of large encampments that we have there. But what we see, or what the community sees mostly is areas that are more visible to the community, and that's what you see here. That's our pocket parks, our pocket park on Center Street. That's our parking lot. That's our bridge. We're seeing encampments in these areas. Just the pocket park on Center Street, we've done 2 cleanups this year, one in March and one that we did a few months back. Very large amounts of trash that we ended up taking from there. Obviously, we've done a huge effort in cleaning up encampments over the past couple of years. I wish I could tell you that we have eliminated the problem, that we won't see this again, but the reality is, we're expecting encampments to keep occurring on our properties. I attend the homeless meetings for the county monthly to see what other cities and districts and communities are going through with homelessness, and all of them have big homeless encampment issues just like we do. And the reality probably is that with COVID, we'll most likely see an increase in homelessness due to the financial impact that it's having on people. One of the things that I wanted to discuss as well was just the impact that all of this is having on the department. And obviously, one of the one of the impacts that it's having is obviously financial impacts. We're now utilizing CCSD general funds to pay for contractors to help us with the cleanup. We have had the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch also contribute to the cleanup of encampments on the ranch, whether it's them paying a contractor or them reimbursing us for hiring a contractor to pay for that. Those monies that they had were to be used for other purposes. And obviously they're deferring those monies now to help with the cleanup process and, us as well. This year, the board allocated $25,000 for fiscal year 2020, 2021 to help with the cleanup of encampments. When we clean up the encampments in January, we will have exhausted those funds. Just to clean up at the Pocket Park a few months ago cost us about $9,000 just to clean that Pocket Park. This year also, we're budgeting for a trailer so that we can load belongings and store them at our facility. But I think the biggest impact that you're seeing from all of this cleanup is more of the impact of our staff or my staff and my time having to be shifted over now to help with cleanup, with inspections, with follow-ups, with meetings with the sheriff, with services that we're trying to provide for the individuals there. That time obviously is being taken from maintenance of buildings, of our parks, from following up on goals that PROS has, direction that our board has for us. So all of that is having a huge impact on the ability of us to do efficient work in the department. One last thing that I just wanted to convey, and that's something that I passed along with to the PROS Commission, is just the way we go about interacting with the homeless community on our properties. And I'm grateful to our legal counsel, Tim and his team, for providing us with a procedure for eviction and cleanup. We have that, we use it, but I typically don't utilize it unless I have to. My approach has always been to talk to the people there, treat them with respect, with kindness, have a conversation with them about them staying there, how long they're going to be there, what can we do to assist them and moving on and clean up. And that has been effective for the most part in alleviating some of the financial burdens from the district of us having to store stuff and having to keep it at our sites and having to move stuff in and out for them. If they're able to help us, that's a win-win. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Mr. Mendoza, I really have to first of all say that I'm astounded and humbled by the amount of energy that you are able to provide to the folks that are in this homeless situation, because it takes a great deal of empathy, but it also takes a great deal of emotional strength to be able to do it. And that's not an easy thing to sustain. And I wanted to acknowledge that, because it's easy to take it for granted when someone is solving a problem. And the reason it's being solved is the commitment that you've made to this process and the effort that you're making in making it positive for people so that we can resolve it in a reasonably equitable way for them. So I thank you very much for that, and for your commitment and interaction with the county and other areas of understanding the best ways to approach this process and to solve it in the most positive way possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's anything else from yes, Vice President Howell.
Just an observation, which may be just an artifact of the pictures, but it does seem that I was impressed as the older encampments, the incredible mess, the trash and everything. It looked to me, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe, Carlos, maybe it is your, in the way that you've been interacting with the
influence, yeah.
Because the newer encampments, they look neater, they look more organized. That they're perhaps being done with a little more respect for the environment they're in. Maybe that's just an artifact of the pictures that were taken. But in any case, the fact that you went from a huge number in 2015 down to one, you must be doing something right, you know. So really kudos to that. You know, whatever you're doing is probably the right thing.
Yeah.
I'd have to say. I
agree.
Yeah.
Director Gray?
Yeah, and one question for Mr. Mendoza. Do you get the sense, I mean, you know, the pattern certainly is that you dismantle the camps, you get few, maybe new ones, but fewer. Are you getting the sense that the word is getting around, I guess, that there's no point in trying to camp here because you get moved very quickly?
So I pretty much have had discussions with just about all the homeless individuals, you know, that are here in town. Obviously, at one point or another, we've ran into each other, and either they've been camping on our properties or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they understand that you know, we're not going to allow encampments on our property, especially, you know, the Fiscalini Ranch or open space properties or by the creek. Obviously, there's huge fire issues and environmental issues that go along with that. So they're aware. And I think as you're mentioning, the word is spreading among the community. And so that has obviously been successful. But I think the other big part of that is that they're seeing us as a presence out there. We're doing weekly, if not bi-weekly, inspections of all these properties. And so our effort is to make sure that we get there as early as possible and identify these encampments, because the longer we allow them to be there, the larger they become. And, you know, that is one of the issues that we have now is the encampments across Cambria Drive is they've been there for a while, and now, you know, they've grown substantially in there.
Right. Okay. Well, Mr. Mendoza, again, I thank you very much. And unless there's any other comment from the board, we'll move on to the utility report. But thank you, and thank you for your continued commitment to doing that. Yes, Vice President Howell?
Just a brief and a query to General Manager and Council. I'm wondering if at a future time you could come back to us with some, is there a way with our insurance that we can use volunteers for some of this work? I know that in the past it's just been cut off, but I'd like to have that looked at, because I can't help but think there may be a way, if our insurance will allow it, that we could engage interested people in the community, because I know there's a lot of people out there that want to help. If we could possibly use it, figure out some way that we can use those people. So that's a request to, and you don't come back to me now, but that's something I probably will be asking you later. So I'd appreciate it if you all could maybe give a look to that.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Howell. If it's all right with the rest of the board members, I'll thank Carlos for his hanging in there this long to be able to provide the report to us. It was very well. It was timely, and it was very valuable. Thank you. So, Mr. Danzo.
President Sayel, we have the finance report first before utility.
Oh, certainly. Okay.
Okay, I'll be brief. So this is a report for the month of November. One item I would like to add to page 78, and Mr. Weigold referred to this a little while earlier when he was discussing the continuance of the emergency declaration. We do have a little bit of preliminary data as our payment due date for September and October was due on December 10th. So as it stood as of last night at the end of business, we had 179 customers that are late in their payments for the September-October billing cycle. And we have at this point in time, as of this morning, we have 16 payment plan requests. So, you know, that the payment plan requests are a little bit higher than we've been seeing, but the customer count for the actual late bills is pretty normal for what we have been seeing for the last 3 to 4 billing cycles. Update on Tyler. I've written the report here on what has happened. We did do 2 data polls. Just today we completed, we had a meeting with Tyler and we completed the last component required to establish our general ledger. So we have our general ledger accounts established and we just need data one of these days soon to get them tested and see how it all works out. Very exciting, and I think we're going to have a lot of efficiencies with the few reports that we were allowed to view today.
Oh, excellent news.
Yeah, one of them is budget to actual. We're actually going to be able to see that live, real time. It's very exciting.
Now I understand why Vice President Howell was so excited when he came back.
It's very exciting. And then as far as the audit goes, the report has been developed. So the audit is in preparation right now. It is currently with Moss Levy Hertzheim, if I can say that properly. And it is under their internal control review. So basically the partner that works with us develops it. He sends it through their internal control within their agency. And if they have any changes, it goes back to the partner. The next step is that it will go to the managing partner, Ron Levy himself. He will be reviewing the report. And once he's done with his report, I will receive a draft. I'm told I should expect that within the next 2 weeks. So I've already communicated that to the finance chair, Mr. Gray, so that if we need to schedule a special finance committee meeting to get that reviewed in advance of the board, hopefully seeing this sometime in late January, we can make that happen. So that's my report. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none. Mr. Whitegold, we can move on.
Okay, I'll pass the baton now over to Ray D'Angelo for the utilities report.
Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Weigold and President Steidel. I'm pleased to present to you the utilities report for activities from the month of November. As you can see, there's some extensive write-ups and some pictures there, but I'll hit some of the highlights. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me about it later. So one of the big things I want to report for the wastewater treatment plant is that the energy conservation measure for the electrical upgrades is continuing. The request for proposal is still going on. We should be getting those results from that pretty soon here, like in the next week or so. And I'll be giving you a report on that for details next week. Also, there's also things related that some of it happened in November, but it's going to be finalized in December, meaning the 30% final for the energy conservation measures for the PG&E project, also for the financing. So a lot of that is happening this week and early next week as we speak. So I'll give you an update on that next week or next month as well. The collection system, the theme of the collection system has been the lift station issues, which, you know, the interesting thing about it is that, you know, there's lift station 4 that we had to submit an altered design to the design group because it was also part of the SST project. and also for one of the other lift stations, lift station B2. I alluded to this last month, where we had a situation where there's a pump that's out of service, that we can't get a replacement pump for it anymore. The pump is no longer in business, and so we are getting some rebuild parts, and we're getting to that this month as well. So, and then lift station B1, I give a little discussion here about some generator, backup generator shuffling, which you can read about it there. But the point being is that we hope that, again, this is also part of the PG&E upgrade project, where we can make this, into a gravity system as opposed to a lift station in the future. So that's also pending as well. As far as the water department goes, there's an interesting picture there about meter relocations that needed to take place, because this is, if you see in your packet there in figure C, this is one of those situations where if I was in person, I would be able to, have a powerful visual where a tree branch, a tree root is wrapped around a meter. And this is a common theme here in Cambria, where it's just the nature of the business here. It's like we have these tree roots, and sometimes plantings get a little too close to these meters. So it's just we would like to remind our customers, if you are going to be planning to direct landscape that doesn't have these extensive roots away from these meters. So that's something that hopefully we can avoid in the future. And the other thing too, that we, as part of our water report, the report from the National Weather Service is that this next season is predicted to be a La Nina year, meaning that there's a possibility that there might be a dry winter coming up. And as we can see, the groundwater levels are starting to trend below average. But I do want to share with you, I just want to share my screen here for a second, because as you can see there on the screen, that we since it was starting to go low, we needed to check it again. And we wanted to check it like after the recent rains, and it looks like that the groundwater level did a little uptick a little bit. It went up 2 feet, even with the small amount of rains that we got. So, which actually reminds me it brings me up to this point where our groundwater basin is unlike a lot of groundwater basins, where it does react very quickly to rains. And that's why it's definitely something that we should consider when we talk about drought stages in the near future here. As far as the work that's being done for the activities, there's a table there for the November activities. We included the line or hydrant maintenance. Something that I will include in the future is how many total that we've done year to date. And but I'll just tell you now, year to date, we've done 170 as of the end of November out of 369. So we are making some good progress on there. Like last month in November, we did 20 hydrant maintenance. So that's the summary there. The sustainable water facility, couple of things for that. We are preparing for the winter. So our staff has been really good in applying some coatings that need to be applied, especially on the roof. So we're finishing that up. The guys finished that up in November. So we're ready to go when the winter season comes. Also, the Tech Talk topic this week is the dynamics of the San Simeon wells and in relation to the sustainable water facility. There's the 3 different scenarios that I presented there. Normally, when you have a normal rain season, the basin underflow is supposed to be, makes its way towards the ocean. and this is kind of a normal situation, where, with normal rain years, where we don't have to run the sustainable water facility, and the disposal from our effluent also creates a mound there in the perk pond. So that's what a normal year should be, scenario 1 there. And in an extreme dry season, scenario 2, you do get a situation where there's a possibility where seawater intrusion would be exaggerated because, and then where there is a danger of the hydraulic gradient heading towards the San Simeon well field, which would be in danger of getting seawater intrusion if it gets too severe. Scenario 3 is when the sustainable water facility is run. It now creates this mound, groundwater mound, over in the injection well in the San Simeon well field. And a question I want to answer publicly, the question came up earlier this week about the screen of the RIW1 is it's a solid 80 feet, and then 40 feet is where the perforations start. So it actually, it's a 120-foot well, but it's solid for 80, and then from the bottom 40 feet it's perforated. Just wanted to answer that publicly as well. And good news, we requested for our coastal development permit. I call it here in the report a land use permit because that is technically what it is when we submit it to the county in our application. But we all know it is as our coastal development permit because that's really where it ends up. November 12th, we requested an extension. The county granted it to us for 180 days. So the next due date is May 31st, 2021. It should give us time to do some of the additional studies, some of which in-stream flow study is the big one. We do also plan to do a minor noise assessment and a traffic assessment, which I still need to get to the bottom of that because it's not technically a traffic study that needs to be done, but I need to discuss that a little bit more. And also we're going to be doing a groundwater model update that's related to stages of drought and our water supply, and also our adaptive management program adaptive management plan as well. And as you see, there's a list of
Mr. D'Anzo.
Yeah. Okay.
I apologize for no. I apologize for interrupting you because I think a lot of what you have to offer to us right now is really important, and we do need to hear it and have you have a chance to say this to us. So I'm afraid I'm going to ask for forbearance and see if we can extend this for another period of time. I don't know what you want to consider, 15 minutes this time around or another half hour. It's up to the board.
I think we
Well,
could
I'm
do
going to move again that we extend this meeting till 6 o'clock, and I don't think we're going to get close to that, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. Also, I want to make mention of the fact that one of the attendees has had their hand up for a while to comment, I believe, on Mr. D'Anzo's report. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second his motion to extend till 6 o'clock.
Thank you. And may I see a hands by affirmation, please? Thank you. Mr. D'Anzo, please continue. Yes, Asana?
Till 6?
Yes.
Okay, just confirming. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Mr. D'Anzo. Please continue.
No problem. The last two things I want to say though is that we did get our grant for the new flume systems, which is the intelligent leak sensor system. So it'll be a grant that'll allow us to do phase 2 of the next program, which is for I believe it's another 100 units. So that should be available in early 2021. So there's that. And the last couple of things, we submitted all of our permits to our agencies, and there's no reports of violations. And of course, you see there the list of all the will serves and the remodel summations there on the list there. And then also, I also wanted to make mention, lastly, the Tech Talk topics are now available on the website.
Oh, good.
So, including this, so there's a repository for all of these that I'm, because we're just going to start collecting these, and if you wanted to go back to where it is, it's under utilities, engineering utilities, and Tech Talk topics is its own heading. So that's what I have, and yeah, please ask any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Do any of the board members have questions of Mr. D'Anzo? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you very much for for hanging in there to the very end through the process. Okay, Mr. Farmer, Director Farmer.
Well, we have an attendee that wishes to comment or ask a question.
And on the basis of the format.
They've had their hand up since Mr. D'Anzo began his presentation.
I recognize that, and as there is one, we will go ahead and acknowledge it. But the information that I started the meeting with was that any public comments would be taken at the beginning.
You didn't. I don't mean to criticize, but you didn't ask for public comment on this item, and the attendee has had their hand up since the beginning.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Asana, would you please call on Crosby and Laura Schwartz?
Yes. Go ahead and talk, Crosby and Laura.
Thank you, President Steidel and members of the board. I'll try to be brief. Sorry to create a problem here. I wanted to thank Ray for coming up with these figures for the three scenarios. Makes it very helpful to understand some of the things that are actually going on with the San Simeon Creek aquifer. It does also highlight some potential problems. I'll quickly mention those. If you look in the figure for scenario 2, as Ray mentioned before, the district pumps like 400 to 500,000 gallons of treated water into the percolation ponds every day. And there should never be a case where the percolation ponds are below sea level and where salt water is coming in past the percolation ponds up toward the wells. All those figures should look similar to scenario 1, where there's a mound at the percolation ponds. The other thing I wanted to mention here on the figure for scenario 3, we're showing the mound created by the injected water. It does highlight the problem that not all of the water this is very expensive water, as you know, not all of the injected water can be used by CCSD customers. As the figure illustrates, a lot of it does just move down toward the ocean and essentially is lost, or even if it's picked up again, it's still gone through the process and has been paid for every time it goes through the machine. And that's basically about it. You can see you want the water to go over from the injection well toward the potable water wells. And so you need to just manage the water level at the injection well carefully to make sure that you're getting what you need in the potable wells, but you're not losing more than you need down toward the percolation ponds. So anyway, good figures. I hope we'll see more of these in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. And President or Director Farmer, I appreciate your desire to make sure that everyone is acknowledged, but the public comment is for regular business, and the manager reports are not regular business. They sit outside regular business. So these are reports from the staff and management team to the board for their consumption. So there are items that sit outside of regular business. And that's why it was approached in that way. We can move on to the board member committee and liaison reports. And the president's report has been approached or has been given already. So are there any additional committee reports from the finance? Probably Director Gray, you don't necessarily have an opportunity to have something to.
Finance is it's between chairs, so no, there's no report.
Okay, fine. And Director Howell, relative to the policy committee?
I think you heard most of everything that I had to say, so I think we can count that as the report.
Okay, fine. And Director Dean, although you are new to the chair of the Resource and Infrastructure Committee, having been vice chair, you certainly are aware of things going on. So is there anything that you wanted to bring to the board?
We did not have a meeting this month, so I have nothing to report.
All right, fine. So in general terms, I'll ask, are there any other reports, liaison reports, or ad hoc committee reports?
Not for me.
No.
Well, I have some liaison reports, but I'm going to hand this back to Director Dean. She might have a report from last night's NCAC meeting.
Yes, I do, and I'll try to make it very brief.
Okay, Director Dean, thank you.
Okay, so we met last night, as Director Farmer said. Supervisor Bruce Gibson reported that SLO County has sold a surplus ambulance to the Cambria Healthcare District, which was very much needed by them. He also mentioned there may be another round of homeless funding coming soon, and some of that will be for the North Coast. The funding will be used to increase services for the homeless.
Oh, cool.
He told the council that COVID is really absorbing quite a bit of the county's time, and that we've recently had a couple of really high count days that our cases in the ICU are increasing, and they're concerned that cases are at record levels, although SLO is still in better shape than other counties. The county is working to get the state to let San Luis, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties to be assessed separate from LA counties for ICU bed availability, and they would like the state officials to look closer at their restrictions. The first batch of COVID vaccines have arrived and will be administered first to healthcare workers and people in the vulnerable care facilities. Our guest speaker last night was Devin Best, who is the executive director of the Upper Salinas Los Tablos Resource Conservation District. He gave a very interesting presentation on the work his crew has done on Upper Santa Rosa Creek. They work to shore up the creek banks to prevent further erosion and slow down the speed of floodwaters during seasonal storms. The council is going to try to put his excellent presentation on the NCAC website for people to view. We received a report from Fire Safe Focus Chair David Pearson on the completion of the work between Tin City and the middle school. And I believe we've already covered, Carlos already covered the planting of the trees on Fiscalini Ranch. Aaron Lynn reported that the small businesses and restaurants are struggling, and he encouraged the folks to support our local businesses and please support our local restaurants by ordering more takeout and delivery. He said that many of the small restaurants have GoFundMe accounts as well, and that our donations and patronage can make the difference on whether their businesses survive this long COVID pandemic. I think I can forego the remainder of my report. I think that's probably covered the highlights.
All right. Thank you, Director Dean. Anyone else? Oh, yes.
One more thing. You asked that the liaison reports be sent in written form, and it's a little bit difficult with the NCAC report where the meeting is the night before the CCSD board meeting. So if you don't mind, I'll just try to keep it as brief as possible when I do my reports.
By all means, thank you. And I do think that particularly with something like NCAC, where it's a possible conduit for information from the county that may affect how CCSD is doing its business is important. Thank you. Okay.
I have some reports to make, and I'm just going to edit them and make them as brief as possible. So first off, from the Cambria Forest Committee, they acknowledge the fact that Alan Pete, he's the local CAL FIRE registered professional forester. He's been in this area for decades. He is retiring and moving back east, so he won't be available for his services any longer. Also, they acknowledge they're very sad to hear of the passing of former Fire Chief Mike Miller, because at one point he was a great supporter of the Forest Committee and actually was a director on the Forest Committee while he was also the fire chief. Also, there was a further discussion, as usual, of forest manager, tasks and qualifications. And I think we're going to be moving forward with this more aggressively with regard to ultimately hiring like I say, a forest manager, a forest ecologist, and getting together with the other organizations in the area and brainstorming. Also, with regard to FFRP, this may not sound like it's all that important, but I feel it is. Monarch butterflies, and we've always had an abundance of monarch butterflies on the ranch as well as down at the Pismo Beach. Essentially, monarch butterflies are basically extinct in our area. They haven't been seen for a long time. There's some recent articles. There's on the front page of the Tribune a week ago on the seriousness of this item. There's also been radio stories both locally and nationally with regard to the decline of the monarch population. There used to be millions of them. Now it's estimated there are only about 20,000. And this is mainly due to, believe it or not, an increase in pesticide use, encroachment on their nesting areas by commercial development, and the climate crisis. Also, with regard to the ranch, many social trails that have been created over time by people just wanting to create a shortcut. These have been closed off, and these areas are being reseeded. And then finally, Executive Director Kitty Connolly stated that the goals and objectives of FFRP are not always in line with their strategic plan, and they're going to be working on that in their annual meeting next month. And then finally, I actually attended the CCHD meeting this morning, and I think there's much to report from there. I'm going to make it as quick as possible. First off, they have a part-time employee that tested positive for COVID, but all the full-time employees have tested negative. With regard to the cases here in Cambria, it was reported this morning that there are 53 cases that have happened here in Cambria and 7 in San Simeon. With regard to the employees at the healthcare district, they're going to be receiving training for giving vaccinations. The date to do that is yet to be determined. And I'm just going to follow up with Chief Hollingsworth and General Manager Weigold said. It's likely that the vaccinations will be happening here in our area, most likely probably starting in mid-March. And like I said, and also the Community Health Center here in Cambria is going to be providing vaccinations probably around the same time. With regard to folks that are food insecure in our area, the Rotary Club has provided gift certificates to the Cookie Crock for 102 families in this month, and the CCHD is seeking a $30,000 grant from the Cambria Community Council to continue this into January and February. The Lions Club is also hoping to provide some cash in this area. Also, the grant has been submitted for personal protective equipment for the folks that do the emergency services from the healthcare district. Also, there was an election of officers. Iggy Fedorov has been reelected as president. Also, there was a new board member, Cece Lomelli. She requested a time change with regard to their meetings, which used to be at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Now they're on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. She requested a time change because she's full-time employed at CHC. So as a result, these are now going to be on Tuesday, the third Tuesday of the month at 5:30. And also finally, CCHD is getting 9 new Motorola portable dual band radios to replace the 20 that they have. But these are actually going to be more efficient. They're going to cost $48,000, but ultimately communication among emergency crews is going to be more effective and efficient as a result. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Director.
I thought people might want to be, most importantly, folks would want to know when the availability of the shots for the virus are going to be. And like I said, just following up probably in mid-March. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have the benefit also of Chief Hollingsworth with the staff of the CCSD paramedics who would be also those providing inoculations. All right. Are there any other, do I hear any other reports? Or okay. I'd like to open it to future agenda items then. Any future agenda items from anyone?
Well, I'm just going to make a reminder that as a future agenda item that we address considering renaming the SWF to the Emergency Water Supply Project, which is the original name that was given, and also appoint a new ad hoc committee for the CDP now that the previous members of that are no longer on the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, President or Director Farmer.
Thanks for remembering. Long gone.
Okay. Is there anything else from the board for consideration or discussion before we adjourn? Yes, Director Dean.
This isn't a future agenda item, but I would like to express our sincere sympathies to Kathy Tanner for the loss of her husband, Richard. Yes. A very sad situation, and I really want her to know that our hearts go out to her.
And I'm glad she's here to, as an attendee, to hear that from you, and frankly, all members of the board. I believe I'm safe in saying that's the case.
Yeah, if I could also make a comment, Kathy also attended the CCHD meeting this morning. So Kathy is doing her job despite the conditions that she's dealing with. And our condolences to you, Kathy, especially those of us that have known you for such a long time.
Thank you, Director Farmer.
She also attended last night's NCAC meeting, and I'm amazed that she's a strong person. She's continuing.
Yes, she is.
Things, yeah.
Yes, I agree. All right. Anything else that anyone has? If not, I'm going to be calling for completion of the meeting.
Sounds like a plan.
As President Seidel, see you in 2021.
Ah, and before this the sign off. For those of you whom I may not see or talk to before this, have a wonderful holiday season, and please be safe. Have your families around you where it's possible, and make every bit of what you can from being together when you can.
And the same to you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Holidays.
See, I agree, Mr. Royal. See you in 2021.
We need a new year.
Hello. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody. Much love.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the holiday.
Bye-bye.